You're optimistic. You're giving things in terms of 30 years.
I'm not optimistic. I'm realistic. I'm saying that I cannot, that you cannot expect to change in a day what it has taken a few centuries to put together, and that it's each one teach one, and that everybody who believes that way should be doing as much as they can. Expect to change in a day what it has taken a few centuries to put together, and that it's each one teach one, and that everybody who believes that way should be doing as much as they can. You see, a lot of folks believe that if they can't change the whole world by themselves, no sense in them doing anything. Absolutely wrong. As living as we do.
Oof. Good everything.
Good everything. It started here at the beginning strains of winter in America. The great Gil Scott Heron. Can you believe he was barely out of his teens when he wrote Who Will Survive in America? Sound like he wrote it yesterday.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I can believe that because when you are not so bogged down, we were just talking a little bit before we came on with life, that you can think. You know, I've been encouraging people to tap into their imagination, and that, you know, when you are sitting in something and you're a creative person and you're unfettered by, you know, the people telling you what you can't do, you become a Gil Scott Heron. But then he also was addled with being too smart. I've been hearing that a lot. Too smart, too introspective, and that can eat you up too.
Oh, sure. Well, that would make sense, especially now, the age of deep stupidity. You probably been seeing a lot. I think stupidity is. Let me be more precise. I've been trying to be more precise. The lady who wrote the article that's making all the rounds now in the Atlantic. I haven't got my print copy yet, and so I had to do something that I don't like doing, but for a subscription, I had to read it online. Rose Horowitz. Our article of the August issue of the Atlantic. It's the end of reading is here. So she's described it as post-literate, and I can absolutely understand why people in this age would consider Gil Scott Heron too literate. Even then, perhaps some of that noise, but certainly now, because the way she describes it, it isn't frightening, it's sobering, but we're past literacy now. Shorter sentences, fewer words, strung together for meaning in an age of more words, more writing. So yeah, you got to have it in small chunks. In fact, one of the things she mentions is Netflix is now saying, according to some unattributed sources that she, or at least she refers to, it's telling its screenwriters and its producers, particularly its screenwriters, to in their shows repeat things. Why? As she says, assume Netflix is telling them, assume the people watching are not paying it. Therefore, keep coming back to it because they're not paying attention. It's on, but they're not. It's with a post-literate age. So, of course, Gil Scott Heron would be indecipherable today, even as Kendrick Lamar is considered a genius.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a shot in her mask. Monday night, office, anyone, please come, let's talk. Anyway.
You know, I've strategically decided that I was going to double down on writing. And I'm also saying to people, we have to intentionally force ourselves to read. You know, I was sharing that, you know, I had been listening to books on Audible for like a year, and it atrophied that reading muscle, and it scared me because I'm like, can I get it back? Because I'm, you know, and, you know, somebody that reads daily, I'm sure you could never imagine having you
mention it every day. No, we're all victims of it. Of course. No, I fight that every day. Attention span has been severely diminished. The only way we get it back, and Horowitz makes this point, is to do exactly what we're doing. Read. What she says is that the good news is the more you read, the easier it is to read.
Yep.
Yeah, we know that. You know that. You're a writer. I mean, she just makes all kind of interesting points. We won't go into detail today because I want to sit with the language and maybe another week. But yeah, it's from oh no, I fight that every day. We all fight it, I think. But the challenge we have is we remember before. What happens when you're a child and you don't have a level set? That's the challenge to me. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I thank God every day that I grew up with a rotary phone, and and when that street light comes on, I thank the Lord every day that I was outside all summer. Didn't know what a swiping was. If it rained, we were playing Clue and Uno and you know, Monopoly. We had to be in somebody's house playing a board game or two. You know,
or just be quiet.
Yeah,
turn everything off.
Yes, yeah.
It's thundering and lightning. Sit down.
Yes.
Turn everything off and be quiet.
Yep.
Can you imagine that happening today?
I remember being down south because I spent my summers with my grandma.
Yeah.
You know, and them storms, them southern storms are different.
Very different.
And you could get electrocuted. You couldn't even be on the telephone. I'm sure the science behind it was probably not good science. But you know,
no, because they're wires.
Okay.
Everything is wires. Get off that telephone. That thing's connected to a wire in the air. No question. No, that's good science. Get off that telephone. No
so I would sit in my grandmother's lap and we would just, you know, sit
wow.
and just be while the storm was going. I remember it distinctly, like, and it's a fond memory. You know,
what a beautiful memory. She probably had to while it rocked a little bit.
Yes,
with the rhythm. Oh my God.
Yes.
That lap time, the scientists now want to name it. We ain't had no name for it. We just knew that. What a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful memory. Oh, and to write a sentence or two about it in the style of a Tony Cade or a Toni Morrison, that's where the power of their language comes from. It's the familiarity. Yeah. But to get to that, you got to read. And to read, you got to be able to sit with. Can you imagine the difficulty in learning Toni Morrison now?
Yes, I can imagine. And I'm sad about it because it's almost like there's a whole generation that won't be able to pass that to the next generation because they won't have it. And then there's a previous generation that abdicated its responsibility to make sure that next generation, because that was kind of the internal workings of us, is that there was a responsibility that no one had to tell anyone that they had to pass these things along. They just did, you know, they just brought their children or their grandchildren to the bingo hall or to wherever they were going. You had to sit among the adults and be quiet at the same time and listen to their conversation, but knew that you couldn't participate in it. There were unspoken rules that were just there that got passed down, and there are no rules anymore. No more rules. But
well, part of it is that fortunately Morrison continues, endures in the pages of book, that when a generation has been invited into a protocol reading, it will be there. And then the other part, of course, it reminds me of Benga used to tell us about. He was growing up in Congo, and grandfather who he
Wait,
swore could act.
your mic is going in and out a little bit.
Hold on.
I want to hear everything.
Let me switch the pose.
Okay, now it's muted. Okay. Keep talking. Because I'm going to hear this.
Is that better?
Yeah,
Is that better?
Keep talking. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I keep redundancies, as we say here, so I should be okay. We should be okay. If not, I'll take it. As Dr. One thing is it's in the written word; it persists. So when we get that protocol connected, I think of Joan Elliott and McDonald Williams and Jamie Williams at Tennessee State, who required us to read out loud. It didn't matter whether we were reading Langston Hughes or Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It didn't matter whether we were reading Nikki Giovanni or Homer or the ancient Egyptians. You had to read it out loud. It's an honors English class. We had to sit there and do that. So there's that. We can always recover it. And then there's the other element. As I said, dear fellow Benga used to tell us about this. And so when I read it later and asked other people, it resonated. He said his grandfather used to talk to him and tell him in Congo that, and this is a man, of course, Obenga is one of the great linguists in the world right now. I've watched him learn languages, Hebrew and Greek, taught us a little bit of Mandarin and a lot of Attic Greek after we did Meta Nature, that kind of thing, just to get our minds active, thinking about language and translation and recovery. But Obenga said, my grandfather could talk with the monkeys. And now that would sound crazy as hell to someone who is subliterate. But to someone who understands that language is a form of communication, it didn't sound crazy to us at all. But he would talk about how his grandfather would tell him. So Benga was born in the early 1930s. He's still with us. He's still at Congo, Brazzaville. So his grandfather, you're talking about 19th century, pre-invasion, or at least alongside the invasion of the French, Alfred de Brazza, for whom Brazzaville is named. But he said, in my rites of passage, his grandfather, when I was a little boy, they would let me sit in the circle. They let all of us sit in the circle, but they would put straw in our mouths after a certain age. Because when you're little and they tell you to be quiet, it's easier. But as you start, as we would say, when we were saying, start smelling yourself, you might I'm 12, let me say, no, they put straw in your mouth. And you knew you had reached an age of maturity and rising maturity when asked a direct question to respond to and being instructed, take the straw out, answer the question, put the straw back. And so, so when we think about the things now, and again, this is to people who think that these things are American. This is Black American culture. No, you're subliterate, and we're going to help you. This is something that we have always been doing. So we can recover it, Prof. We can recover. We can recover home training. It won't take a generation. It's going to take.
I pray that that's true. And on the flip side, there's an obsession with translating other people's, that the fact that, his grandfather could talk to the monkeys. We have Dr. Doolittle, the wild thornbirds, like that. There's been this, we could, let's translate what the Africans are saying, like people coming in and then placing their small, tiny view of everything. And then they get to write the books translating,
Right.
and we're fighting against that as well, because, when you pointed out the difference between those folk that were sent to talk to the formerly enslaved and then Zora Neale Hurston going out and talking, and the vast difference in what we got, but what we got from them went into the schools,
That's right.
Not the Zora Neale Hurston. I didn't even hear that until her documentary came out, until you talked about it.
Oh, yeah. And of course, the sister whose voice we played deep in COVID, Ophelia Egypt Settle, who Charles Johnson and that crew out of Fifth sent for that very purpose. And these elders looked at her as a daughter, as a granddaughter, and they talk with her differently. And then you send some white kid, extremely well-meaning, into the space, and they're going to tell them a different perspective. They're going to tell them who am I to you story. Still valuable, but very much different. And if you look at somebody look like your grandbaby coming up on the porch saying, do you mind sharing with us a time when you were my age or younger? And of course, there's all the things that are fraught, the dangers, the reasons that they didn't talk about those kind of things. But then as they loosened up, they talked to her. And God bless Jane Goodall. Jane Goodall, brilliant scholar, scientist, but Jane, don't come to Africa talking and thinking, I've deciphered. Yeah, you see that old man over there? That's still Follow Benga's grandfather. His great-grandmother told him how to do that. You're a scientist, but what you have not yet discovered is that white people are not the center of the universe. That's the deeper lesson. that you not. And so just because you publish a book or make a documentary and find some elder and stick them in the frame of your documentary for 30 seconds and think, I want to thank old Hatem who came and helped us. Yeah, no. No, Hatem should be making the documentary. You should be quiet,
Right.
but you can't because your arrogance makes you think that you are the discoverer, and that's fine because everything in nature is laughing at you, including those monkeys. You didn't see what they said about you in your face because you don't speak their language, did you? But at any rate, I mean, it's just fascinating the arrogance of whiteness. But you know, it's coming to an end.
This is why we're here, but also to encourage everybody to tell their story of their
That's right.
family, of their, you know, like their story. We've been conditioned that only certain people can tell stories.
That's right.
We all have a responsibility to present our narrative.
That's right.
We all have a responsibility.
That's right. That's right. It has been a busy week. Caught some of your conversations. We were talking earlier about how you talked about Toni Morrison and how Miss Morrison in an article she published in the 1990s, you know, talked about this. You might have said a few words about that before we, as we continue.
And you know, like I'm sure like you, my show's collaborative. You know, I get emails and DMs and the Nubians will drop stuff in the chat and post things. It, you know, this work that we do is collaborative. It is so somebody dropped that 1993 Toni Morrison Time magazine article. I think it was in Nubia in the chat. And I was like, I've never seen this before. Oh, okay. Let me go in and read it. And it was like, you know, it just is a reminder, again, there's nothing new under the sun, but more importantly, somebody said some things before. It's our responsibility to unearth it, which is why I love sitting here with you every Saturday and beyond, because, you know, we be texting and I get to listen to you on the mornings,
yes.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But yeah, no, it was stunning. And how, you know, even today, Toni Morrison had a clarity that I don't see in too many people. There are a lot of folk that pontificate and they're pundits and they, you know, get on these TV shows and they talk. But Toni Morrison was very clear and unapologetic and unafraid. And as you were playing this clip, the Gil Scott-Heron, the Kanye, I winced at Kanye, but again, I got to get over it because this was good.
No. It was Gil Scott-Heron. Don't get over it. The reason that I played that and not the 69 or 1970 version of Who Will Survive in America was very deliberate. You know, Gil Scott-Heron was 19, so I guess it would have been 1971 when they released Small Talk on 125th Street. That one couldn't play. There's a lot of MFs in there and a lot of Kanye and you know, Gil Scott-Heron made transition in May 2011. And as I've said before, I was there at Riverside in New York when they had the memorial with his daughter there, and you know, the family was there and everyone there. And the last person to speak at the official ritual before it closed was Kanye, because he had recorded Who Will Survive in America. And it was interesting because, you know, some of the last poets were there. But I'm raising that to say that, you know, Kanye's sample, which really isn't a sample at all, it's Gil Scott-Heron with Kanye a little bit in it. Kanye's sample there, he edited it in a way so that you could play it now without all the curse words in 1971. And of course, the video, which wasn't Kanye at all. Obviously, that video was created years after Kanye's, because you see the January 6th, the Hillbilly Horde of it. To me, George Floyd, absolutely. The visuals there in that video just create another layer of power so that we can use Gil Scott-Heron's words in the momentum of memory. And Kanye in some ways becomes a bridge between that Gil Scott-Heron moment of cultural meaning making and what happened after Kanye released that song. So no, it's wince-worthy, but I love the layering in it. Yeah.
And that's Kanye when Dr. Donda West was still influential in his
Facts, life. Who you knew and of course helped give birth to her raising Kanye. I'm so glad. Yeah.
Yeah. But Toni Morrison wrote On the Backs of Blacks. You know, and as you're reading it, I like all of the other pieces, everyone else, including me, should just sit down, let her speak. We need to do more of that, like unearthing the people that they have, you know, tried to bury, or we've just forgotten. Not that we could ever forget Toni Morrison, but this piece, I'm like, she went in from the door. That all of this was built on the back, the title, On the Backs of Blacks. I said, man.
Well, remember, you know, this is the thing, and we always balance that, as we know, you know, in our Africana Studies framework. the reason that cultural meaning making is separated from movement and memory, this is a great example of it. Ms. Morrison, coming out of Ohio and then coming to Howard University, Ms. Morrison is, when we hear her, we hear all of those influences. But because we will not hear the names of her teachers at Howard, because we will not hear the conversation she had with the authors that she edited after Charles Harris left Random House, everybody from Muhammad Ali to Ivan Van Sertima, as you know, our colleague Dana Williams, who you've talked with,
Yeah.
writes about it, and Tony at Random. When we hear her, what we're really looking at is not only an individual genius, but the collective genius. And she, in her very brilliant way, is channeling things that she was in conversation with, one of them being her friend and comrade Amiri Baraka, who had written a generation before The Changing Same and said that. But we don't have those footnotes. What reading allows us to do is footnote as she's talking so we can bring more people into it. And then finally, in a social structure rendering, the reason we know Toni Morrison, just like the reason we know August Wilson, is not only because of their individual genius, but because the social structure curated them, because Western society is absolutely committed to highlighting individuals. Whereas in a governance formation, when you see August Wilson, you also should see Woody King and Alice Childress and everybody else in the black, because he was deeply, when you see Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, you should really also then look past and say, oh, there goes, wait, there's Tony K. Wait, there's Amiri Baraka. There's Amina Baraka. Where did all these people? But that's not what Europeans do. We need a special Negro. When you see Ta-Nehisi Coates, you literally see the man who helped help Paul name him. Ta-Nehisi, Black Land, and Ancient Egyptian, Yosef Ben Yakinen. But they got Ta-Nehisi, and that's all we need. So we're going to place you here. And while Ta-Nehisi is screaming at the top of his lungs, hey, wait, no, it's not just me. No, it's you. Okay, fine. Let me talk because I'm the one sitting in the chair. But it just continues to, we have to balance that here with, okay, we're never going to allow one or two people, including us, to ever do anything other than come back and say, when you see, like Anna G. Cooper said, when and where I enter, the race enters with me. Ms. Morrison did a great job of that. At the same time, you can only do so much in a social structure that wants individual Negroes as some kind of outlying zoo of amazing talking monkeys, because they still think you're a monkey. You're not going to convince them. It's not a monkey. It's just a beautiful zoo called Princeton, a beautiful zoo called Harvard, beautiful zoo called Berkeley. That's all. They curate you, stick you there.
Well, this 1993 piece, I just want to read a little bit from it. 1993, again, just 1993. And she's talking about, everyone's like, oh, we're, post-racial, or let's stop talking about race. And she said, as American Blacks occupy more and more groups no longer formed along racial lines, the pressure accelerates to figure out what white interests really are. The enlisted military is almost 1/4 Black. Police forces are blackening in large urban areas, but welfare is nearly 2/3 white. Affirmative action beneficiaries are overwhelmingly white women. It's 1993. Dysfunctional white families jam talk shows and court TV. The old stereotypes fail to connote, and race talk is forced to invent new, increasingly mindless ones. There is virtually no movement up for Blacks or whites, established classes, or oh my goodness, Aravistas. Now I got to write that down. Dr. Carr.
You know avarice?
No, this is not that.
Is it atavism? Is it atavism?
Arrivistes.
Avaristis. Yes. Yes.
But in real time, like if there's something that you don't know, look it up. There's
no question.
Coming back to it.
I think, but what's the context?
For Blacks or whites, established classes, or I always struggle with in real time. Aravistas.
Aravistas, I would say probably in the context of avarice, meaning those who are trying to make a profit, those who are trying, I'm assuming, I'm using context clues in the context of, and I'm assuming that that's in italics. Is it in italics?
No, hold on.
Let's see. This is
Aravistas. The term refers to someone who has recently acquired wealth. Social climber.
Okay. Yeah.
Upstart. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this, I love
Well,
this.
they would also call them parvenus in the French, or as we would
Never
say
been
in
nowhere.
Ebonics, somebody ain't never been nowhere.
Okay.
in other words, you ain't never. Oh, you knew. I see.
And for those
Or
of you,
what we call bougie too. Bougie is
bougie.
that
Okay.
which is not in the French.
Love this.
French is bourgeois. You are part of an established class. To be bougie means you just bought those shoes. And now
Yeah.
you in here telling the waiter to send it back because it's cold. Not even realize that dish is served cold. Yet you knew. You probably knew. Avaristas. Yeah, no question. Y'all just got here. You just arrived. See, the context is there.
No, it is. And we can figure it out, but it's better to know. And it's
It's
also
better to know.
better.
It's
better
better to
all
know.
the time. And if you're sitting there like, I use Aravistas all the time, why didn't these people know what it
There
meant?
it is.
Shame
There
on
it is.
you. It's like, I've never
No.
used it.
There it is. There it
Yeah.
is. That's very Aravistas
I
to
use
say that.
Aravistas all the time. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So she says there's virtually no movement up for blacks or whites, established classes, or Aravistas that is not accompanied by race talk. Refusing, negotiating, or fulfilling this demand is the real stuff. The organizing principle of becoming an American, star-spangled, race strangled. Oh,
Star Spangled, race strangled. Why not Star Strangled? Why not Star Strangled?
Because she can write.
Well, no. I think that they're in, again, now this would be a different kind of conversation or not. I mean, it seems to be the central function. This is her friend in Ngugi wa Thiong'o, and also Ikwe Arma, who worked as a translator. What does it mean when you say something and someone else hears it, but you don't have a common language? What's the common denominator there? So in their metaphor, star-spangled, race strangled, seems to me that, let's just think about this, is that creating an equivalency? Are you contrasting the two?
It would seem so.
Yeah, it would, right? So to be race, now, does she mean to be, and it could very well mean that she does. It could be many meanings. But
Well, first, hold on. What does star-spangled? Like
this is what, come on now. Yes.
And again, as we are learning, because we're hopefully all learning, hopefully we're all in this space of like, I don't know a lot. Let me learn more. That's why you're here. Where did the star-spangled thing even come from? Because we have the star-spangled banner that we can recite. I'm listening to Judge Stone, Viola Davis, James Patterson, and it's amazing how they bring in all of the things in the Black Belt of Alabama, and it's race, it's abortion, it's all of the things. And they're playing Dixie, right? There's a rally and they're playing Dixie. And I remember my dad saying that he learned that song in Newark, New Jersey in class, and what that means, right? So there's meaning to all of these things that we just do, and it becomes a mantra that indoctrinates us into a way of thinking about ourselves.
Right.
And so if we don't examine and start pulling this out, what is star-spangled? What does that mean to us?
Oh, I think that's the forming question. That's the governance question. What does it mean to us? But in order for it to mean something to us, there must be an us. And it seems to me that if you or I were in a classroom, well, we're in a classroom now, obviously we're with each other and with thousands of people. But if we were in a physical classroom with 20 or 30 or 100 or 200 or 15 or however many students, and we simply wrote that phrase on a board and said, let's talk about it. Is there, what did she say? Star-spangled, race strangled. Is there a device there? Is a slash between star-spangled and race? What's between?
Star-spangled period, race strangled period.
Okay, so are those sentences? You the English.
Whole sentence.
Yes, those are whole sentences.
Yes.
Okay, as they follow each other, then it seems to me that in our minds, we might process that as an equivalency. We take perhaps that period out of star-spangled and put an equal sign there. If we were in our minds, we're trying to conserve. Now, does she mean, and she could very well mean, in fact, I would speculate that this is one of the meanings she may be attributing to it in 1993 after the election of Bill Clinton, who she called the first black president. Even Toni Morrison can make mistakes. So when we think about this, in order to be star-spangled, must race strangulation be a part of it? In other words, star-spangled play race. Okay. So you have to strangle race in order to be star-spangled? I mean, it makes historical sense, which is why you will never see me with a flag, because every one of them stripes is filled with blood, and every one of them stars is settler colonialism. Why in the hell would y'all wear this and say, me too? as Richard Pryor said, what the hell's wrong with y'all? When you say we fought the Indians, you want them mad at us too? You every time you wave that flag, if you're an indigenous person, they say, well, we wave the flag because we're patriotic. No, you're not. I mean, in your heart. Oh, in my heart? Man, exactly, because every one of them stars means murder. So is that what she's saying? Or is she saying Star Spangled is a place to occupy that could potentially be filled with pride? And the thing that's holding it back is race strangulation. That too
Well,
is irrelevant.
the sentence before,
Okay.
refusing, negotiating, or fulfilling this demand is the real stuff. The organizing principle of becoming an American, because this whole piece is about America, but it's also about race. And she's saying you cannot have a discussion about America without talking about race. And everybody that wants to stop talking about race, you don't want to have a conversation about America, because she starts with the immigrants. She starts the piece with the Ellis Island, but she ends it with,
she ends it with
Star Spangled, Race Strangled.
I see. So she did. I had to go back and look at the essay.
So she starts with fresh from Ellis Island, Stavros gets a job shining shoes at Grand Central Terminal. It's the last scene of Elia Kazan's film America, the story of a young Greek's fears. But then in that encounter, the young Greek encounters a black man, shoe shiner, and he tells him, get out of here.
Got it. Got it. So Miss Morrison,
we're doing business here.
Miss Morrison continues to traffic in the amputated memory, unfortunately, even after having edited Ivan Van Sertima. So, in other words, the point of origin is Ellis Island and not the Sea Islands of Georgia, because she's making a point. I'm not critiquing her.
She's doing a piece for Time Magazine.
And there we go.
She's talking to white people.
This is who we are to other people.
Yeah.
And yet, what then from a governance, how should we read that in governance language? We cannot enter that frame as human beings. The only thing we can do is enter it as some type of helpmeet for white people to perhaps either discard their whiteness or come to a different sense of humanity. But the black subject, which is why, I've said this over and over again, the African subject remains unimagined.
Right.
Even in that language. Right. We come into Ellis Island shining shoes talking about get out.
No, right. The Greek comes in before he's white, and his whiteness, her point is his whiteness comes into play in his interaction with the black man, and his ability to be able to denigrate that, or to, sit that black man in his proper place. Now he's invited into whiteness, which is America. Right. And I think
absolutely. Which is white America.
Well, some would say that is America. And so we have to negotiate. There's so much.
My question is, what is the black man thinking?
Exactly.
And that's my first question, perhaps even my only question, which is why, again, the genius of Toni Morrison is that she takes that for granted. In subsequent speeches and writing, she would say, no, I'm not, I assume my humanity. I'm not going to. So, there's a lot going on there. No question.
When you said if you had to choose between the two Tonys and you said you would choose Toni K. Barbaro, I clutched my pearls a little bit and I said, Dr. Carr, inside. I was like, how dare you?
All of us. It's like saying that. It's like me saying that Baldwin has never moved me and people be clutching their pearls.
Yeah.
Okay.
That part I get. I'll move on. But I only get it because I've been thinking and evolving and growing, and having now read both, I get what you're saying. At the same time, I might still choose Toni Morrison just because of where she sits with her understanding of who she is. She said, my father always thought he was superior. Like, she was raised in a household with a black man that thought he was morally superior to all white people. And
absolutely.
So that animates her, and she's having a different conversation than Toni K. Barbaro. Toni K. Barbaro is talking
absolutely.
to us. She's talking to us. Toni Morrison is talking to them, but she doesn't care about them. But she's talking to them because we live here, we're overwhelmed by them, and they run like hordes,
right.
And they have courage in crowds. Like you're gonna show up on a train in DC and surround with your masks on, you're cowards, but you're only strong together. You don't say it with your full chest one-on-one because you know what's going to happen. You come in crowds, and she knows that this is what we're negotiating, and it's about staying alive but also preserving who we are in the midst of this madness that we're in. And she's talking to that. So Sula, all of the books, it's just anyway.
No, that's not anyway.
with if I had to choose, I'm not choosing. I'm taking both because they both are, equally.
Well, we're taking all. That's
Yeah.
the whole point. Yeah,
All,
that was just a
yeah.
thought exercise. We don't choose. Yeah, and as one of her teachers, Sterling Brown, wrote in his poem "Strong Men," they don't come by ones. They don't come by twos. They don't come by three. So for even the notion of, as Malcolm X said, you never see one of them come after one of you and shout to you ICE punks to kill that man in Houston and the ones that abducted that young Latino ball player, all-star, HBCU all-star at Savannah State, you punk asses, and you flop-eared bastard, Marco Rubio, hiding your whiteness. You will never be president of anything. But they don't come by ones. They don't come by two. Sterling Brown said that. Toni Morrison sat in those rooms, and Ms. Morrison, in her moment of cultural meaning making, took that momentum of memory and emptied it forward. And you're absolutely right. We don't choose between sisters. We don't choose between family because those two, nobody's closer than Toni Morrison and Toni Cade Bambara. When she got sick, Ms. Morrison said, "Hey, man, you come stay with me." They're writing literally, as Toni Cade writes in her collection of essays up there. She says, I was downstairs and she was upstairs and we were writing, and then she'd run downstairs or I'd go upstairs and say, "Read this, edit this." So you're absolutely right. We don't choose, but in the cycle, people would immediately say, no, we're not arguing. It's just a thought. But if I had to choose, I probably would, and then again, I would even go that far because there are things that Ms. Morrison wrote very different with the interaction with Toni Cade Bambara.
See?
That would have been very different. It's just very difficult. But yeah.
But I think it's important that we read, and we couldn't have this conversation unless we, because we form these opinions. I'm sorry, we form these opinions.
We apologize. This is it. This is what we do. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
We form these opinions. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please.
No. We form these opinions based on what we think we're supposed to say or know or believe about things. But very often we don't sit with the entirety of what it is that we actually feel.
Right.
And that is, that's work. And it's just so much easier, on Friday, actually on Thursday, I talked about Nolan.
Yes.
That young man. But I also I talked about, a situation I had at motor vehicles, and the phone lines lit up, and I thought people would want to talk about Nolan, but everybody wanted to talk about, my situation at motor vehicles and getting a rejected symbol thing and how pissed off I was. Cause I'm always going to bring a little levity in. And I said to you, talking about Nolan is too uncomfortable. And I get it. And I do get it. And then she shared that her son was, she shared her truth and that this story was triggering to her because something similar happened. Not her son was killed, but he was left somewhere. And for a moment in time, she was afraid that he wasn't coming home. And she called to talk about Nolan, but it was just too hard. And I was like, we have too much of this emotional trauma that we have to suss through and navigate. And at the same time, just exist. And this anger, because anger is hurt too, has to go somewhere. And there's no place for it. In this society, there's no real place for it. And so, I'm sitting there because we don't know what to do, but we do know what to do. But we know if we do the thing that we so it's all of that we're working through. Like, what do we do about this so it doesn't happen again? So let's talk about motor vehicles, because that's something I know you can't change your battery right before you go get inspected. Like that. When I tell you the lines were lit with that and not with talking about Nolan, because what do you say?
Now, was there a common denominator between those two stories?
I didn't think so when I shared them. I was just like,
what did your experience at the Department of Motor Vehicles and all these people's shared experiences share in terms of a situation with this young brother surrounded by whiteness?
It wasn't. I came in on purpose because, I'm very intentional. I said, let me start off before I get into this heavy story, sharing with stuff they don't tell you. So my car had a check engine light. I went to get it fixed. And then I immediately went to motor vehicles to get my inspection sticker because it was up. And they failed me. And I was like, what? I paid all this money to get this car fixed. And they were like, that's why, it's got to go run through a certain amount of times. You got to start a few times before the thing resets. And I was like, why didn't the dealer tell me that? So I came in on that. And then I shared the story, the new information about his cell phone and all of the things that we're finding out. Ben Crump was on, Good Morning America, his parents, and I started sharing that. So after that, the phones started lighting up and I was like, oh, they're going to talk about Nolan. And it was like motor vehicle, but they were listening. So I was like, that's interesting. And then in my mind, I was like, it is really hard to have this conversation. This is an easier conversation. And it's almost like how we like when we went to a funeral in my family, my father and I would, he had jokes at a funeral. And it's a sad thing, but we would sit there, we have comments about everything, and it would be hilarious. And it's almost like we need to find the pressure valve release and having that conversation. I can help. Karen, I know more stuff about this motor vehicle thing. I worked at the car dealer, so people want to be helpful. There's no help in this. I don't know if there's
well, because people couldn't be helpful there. You saying they're being helped. They're trying to be helpful to you here.
Yeah.
Because in both cases, one, unfortunately, fatal, there was an assumption that you knew the rules. I'm just thinking about, and so I can't talk about what happened when this young man lost his life because he don't know how to deal. Who did he have parents? Did somebody tell him you don't go out there with them white boys? I mean, no, but you at the DMV is much lower stakes. However,
correct.
I can help with this one. See, I don't necessarily see those things as unrelated. And to the point you're raising, since you said it yourself, okay, we can't talk about this extreme zero sum a situation where this one didn't know the rules. In this situation, much lower stakes, we can intervene in a way, and even perhaps subconsciously.
Right. And in my mind, I was like,
I can help, Karen. I can't help it, like you said.
I said, we need a manual because these aren't things we're going to learn in school. Our mamas may not teach us about, it's a little inconvenience for me, and it's no inconvenience at all because I'll go back in a few days, maybe next week, the week after, and go through and it'll be fine, But it was like, there's so many things we don't know that we should have a manual, like an adult manual for all the little things that they don't tell us. But to your point, yeah, I think you're right. And also, I struggle with even because Nolan's mother said, he had such a beautiful heart. She shared a story. It was a beautiful story on Good Morning America of him being in a class with a kid that was special needs. And, everybody had their hand up and he told everyone to put their hand down and let this child answer the question. And when they answered the question and it was correct, Nolan was cheering and it got everybody in the class cheering. And that's who he was. And and I told him, be careful to have such a big heart, and it's like, how do you tell your child to be careful to have a big heart? How do you tell your child you can't trust these people, but you have to, right? And you can't blame the parents because I'm sure they had that conversation, but there's no way when you're hanging out with people and you're, that you would think somebody would do something to you or leave you somewhere or allow for you to be harmed and not have your back. That's unconscionable. And for everybody that has had that happen to them, it's a gut punch in a way that you never really recover from. And it makes you very, we've all, I'm sure you've had that experience, or maybe you haven't. Where
no, of course, I grew up in the South, and they bust us. Yeah, I've been around white children intimately, so I know exactly that feeling of thinking you are around human beings and them too, but unconsciously race. Oh yeah, absolutely, I've been there. I would never have been in that situation because my mama, like yours, would never have allowed me to go anywhere with her. I could even go, I want to go to Billy's birthday party. You're not going to Billy's birthday. My mama like, no, but they're having cake. You're not eating a crumb of cake at Billy's house. I don't know Billy's mama. I mean, in other words, the protocols, as Angie Porter would say, are in place. You know what I'm saying?
We're a certain generation of a certain generation whom it's palpable, like they remember Emmett Till, your mama and my mama. Do you know what I'm saying?
No question.
Like, and that wasn't even a situation where they were trying to be in close proximity to white people.
No,
these kids,
your grandmother, like my mother, baked many of those cakes at Billy's house. Correct. So let's be clear. Yeah, it's very different. You're right.
They roll with K-pop. They out here, they out here doing TikTok dances with it. It's not the same tension, but maybe that makes it even more insidious, right?
Oh, no question it does. Absolutely. Absolutely, it does, with fatal consequences. But but we can and do have you had those safe spaces, those governance spaces, those protocol spaces. That's what fortified us, and we need to restore those places for our young people and for all of us. Because when you get that, in his case, contrasting with the young brother in Texas, Carmelo Anthony, you think these people, here come these white boys. Okay, I'm gonna have to fight you. In other words, there's no way for you to navigate a place where you are surrounded by whiteness, whether you stab it with a knife or go along kiki till you find yourself in a fatal situation differently. There's no safe place in whiteness. The only safe place in whiteness is to establish a base that is so strong that they would never even think about doing that kind of thing. And that's what I think we lost during so-called desegregation.
Yeah.
They're not scared of us anymore. So they could just walk up on, if you had walked up on a black high school student from Phyllis Wheatley High School in Houston in 1950 with that shit, first of all, you wouldn't have done it. Because you would have realized there's a problem here. You know what I'm saying? If you wanted to go swimming you went swim with your friend. I mean, segregation was an abomination. It was an evil. It is evil. At the same time, there's a notion of relative strength that comes with building a community that's strong enough to say there will be consequences. When they killed that man in Houston, the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Now, see, that man has a team. He got a squad. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, we need a squad again. And we have a squad. Unfortunately, it's playing football at the University of Mississippi and the University of Texas. Until we decide that we're going to squad up again, it's going to continue. And all we will do is eat that pain, which just diminishes our humanity. You don't beat that kind of thing with a plea. And this is where I do respect, and I won't say respect is the wrong word. I respect him anyway, but I do appreciate the language of James Baldwin. Because James Baldwin spent his entire writing life pleading for his humanity from white people. And if you don't think that's true, please understand that everything Baldwin wrote had race. Not everything, but almost everything. And so I'm saying when race becomes the center of your conversation, for me, that becomes a surrender of humanity that I'm not willing to make. I'm not going to spend. But in that surrender, there is power, there is beauty. I mean, if Baldwin were alive today writing about this case, I have no doubt that it would strike deeply resonant chords with us. And then we would leave the reading of that writing feeling diminished, not empowered. Because for me, what that does is it just puts the pain on display. And then what? As Bob Law would say, therefore, as Joe Madden would say, what you going to do about it? I'm going to share my pain. And in sharing that pain, dear reader, will you, as Du Bois would say in 1903, a full 60 years before he passed, which is why we're obsessed with the souls of black folk, as if he didn't offer correctives for the rest of his life to the question of double consciousness. But why y'all keep coming back to that? Why? Because I have a pain. I want these people to see me. I don't give a damn what these people see you or not. And guess who else didn't? Your grandfather. So why in the hell are you continuing? Because you bombarded with them. And they have literally taken out whatever memory you had and put their memory there. So you somehow think you came from them. It's in the curriculum. So of course, it's natural for you to be in pain and think you have no outlet, no solution, no way to stop the pain. So let's just examine the pain for generation after generation and between, as Richard Wright would write, the world and me. And then Ta-Nehisi takes it and goes, oh, wait, this is fascinating. Tell us more about how you feel. I ain't telling you shit. Okay, you're a hate monger. And Toni Morrison's genius was, I ain't telling you shit. Wow, I'm talking to you. This to me, that's the genius of Toni. Yeah, that's Toni Morrison's genius. She walked in both worlds.
Yes.
No question. Yeah, that's her genius. I agree. So yeah, I mean, what are the odds of us surviving? This is the conversation that Gil Scott-Heron was having as a 19-year-old. Like I said, a couple of weeks ago, I was at Lincoln University with our Freedom School folks, Freedom School training, and you walked that campus as they were packing into the dorms and taking out their clothes and getting their rooms together before we had our sessions. And it gave me a chance to quietly walk the campus of Lincoln University, which I hadn't done in quite some time. And I used to be a regular up there when I lived in Philly, but I hadn't been up there in years. And so just thinking about a teenage Gil Scott-Heron in that space. And when he wrote, who will survive in America, what are the odds that we will survive? Well, we're here. So because we're here, we have the ability, not only the ability to survive, we have the responsibility to survive. I'm going to take these phones out now, just for a sec. Unmute myself. There we are. Very good. So, you know, what are the odds? The odds, as far as I'm concerned, are in our favor. Even as I think about the metaphor, of course, most familiar to many people from the Hunger Games, may the odds be in your favor. The odds are always in our favor. And remember, the metaphor in the Hunger Games is that whatever's happening in the capital city, the revolution is going to come from the provinces, not imaginary provinces like in the Hunger Games, but real ones like New York City. You see, like Atlanta and like Denver, Colorado, and wherever else you can name in the United States, and then beyond. That's how it goes. But you know, who will survive in America? Gil Scott Heron is wondering that, pondering it as a deeply literate young man, between Chicago, where his mother was, between the Caribbean and England, where his father was, the Black Arrow, the great football player, his father, where his grandmother was in West Tennessee, where he was being raised by her, and then she made transition suddenly, and he found her body as her, and she had made transition. Whether it be New York, as he went to school with a lot of white kids, as he's developing his skills and reading Langston Hughes, among others, and writing his own poetry and plays, and then deciding to come to rural Southwest Pennsylvania to go to Lincoln University, because that's where Langston Hughes went. And as I stood there, thank you, Raquel, the archivist at Lincoln, as I stood there in the Langston Hughes Memorial Library, looking at, touching the personal books of Langston Hughes, which he donated to Lincoln University, you know, thinking about Gil Scott Heron and the question of literacy, the question of writing and reading and thinking and listening and speaking. What are the odds of our survival? Who will survive America? I'm sorry, who will survive in America? Because one of Gil Scott Heron's comrades, the great Amiri Baraka, also had a recording on an album that you can find called It's Nation Time. In fact, I'm going to resist the urge. I got his pamphlet that was Hockey and them published a pamphlet of his speech at the 1972 convention in Gary called It's Nation Time. But this was an album, and he has a song on there, Who Will Survive America? Very few Negroes, no crackers at all. Who will survive? Who will survive America? Very few Negroes, no crackers at all. Meaning what? If it's going to be a country, a parvenu Negro, someone who just arrived to a truncated consciousness, very few of them are going to survive. And nobody that places their whiteness above everybody's humanity. Who will survive? He didn't say very few Negroes, no whites at all. No, very few Negroes, meaning that's a class critique. At least that's how I read it and listen to it, with the caveat that in the late 60s, early 70s, the heart of the Black arts movement, he could have very well meant everybody. But I'm reading and I'm choosing to read that as people who have assumed a class posture. Shout out to Clarence Thomas, well, for that matter, anybody, regardless of their ideological position, and somehow think this can be redeemed in its current form. Who will so he didn't say who will survive in America. He had the song Who Will Survive America. It makes me crave for the days, young people, where we had these LPs, these long playing albums like It's Nation Time with Amiri Baraka, like Small Talk at 125th Street by Gilbert Heron. But at any rate, you know, this week, we're now a week past the July 4th rituals in the United States. And again, Prof, deep thanks and gratitude to you and for you. For those who may have missed the fact that there was an abrupt pause in the conversation we were having last week. We then resumed. The technology conspired against us, but, you know, Prof Hunter and the team that we have very quickly traced the source, got it back up. So if you missed the second part where we played the speech that Zorhan Mamdani gave on July the 3rd with new naturalized citizens surrounding him at City Hall, then you might want to go back and look at that. But if you did miss it, it's okay, because what I said was that we would talk this week about thinking about time and space differently, a theme we've visited many times, but I wanted to and want to take the occasion of this ritual moment to do that. this ritual moment, because just because July 4th was last Saturday doesn't mean that the semi-quincentennial is over. We use the corridor, as you know. For those of you who are new to the space, welcome. Glad you're here. Tell a friend, like, share, subscribe if you're on the YouTube side, so we can wreck the algorithm to the degree it can be wrecked. And of course, if you're in the Nubia side, we know how we get down. And, you can come over and do a like too and then come back to Nubia. Just deeply grateful that the subscribers continue to come and flock to the Nubia space, to the narrative space, and then through narrative to Nubia. It's a blessing, and it's an act of self-determination, because everybody in our community, just like everybody in any human community, doesn't think alike, doesn't act alike, does not move in the same way or the same space. Fortunately, however, in making the choice to join with each other in a very conscious and deliberate fashion, we are doing two things. We're recognizing our self-determination, something we've always done since we came onto this planet as a species, and certainly Africans are the parents of anyone who ever walked the ball or go anywhere else either in that right line. But the second thing it does is, in a moment, making that deliberate choice of self-determination, it reinforces the fact that that has to be our center in order for us to make collective progress, not only as a group of people that has been labeled Africans, but as a species. So, thanks to everybody who joins us here. And this morning I thought that it would be a good title for this week. A good title for this week would be Odds and Ends. In some ways, the set of days that we think about when we talk about quote unquote Independence Day in the United States of America, the so-called 4th of July, represents an ending of sorts. This is the window where we could talk about the birthday and celebration. Okay, fine, all this social structure rendering. And to talk about it after that is to introduce an odd number, an odd practice, an overflowing practice. So odds. And then ends and beginnings. Things turn. Yes, it's permanent. July 4th. Okay, so we're going to talk about it next week. I think we should talk about the semi-quincentennial. We're going to talk about that in terms of how we narrate ourselves in time and space, and how we should know, in my mind, this is something we can discuss. We're coming to the end of the second Emancipation. Howard French's book will finish up this week and next week. We're doing chapters 36, 37, 37, 38, 39, and 40 this week, and then we'll finish up in the subsequent weeks before we all head off to Egypt, to Kemet. But in that process, and then after that, we will do a level set. We'll spend a little bit of time just kind of talking and having conversation. Thank you. And we will then decide where we want to go from there. Will it be the second iteration, the third iteration of the Introduction to Afro-American Studies class, and learn a whole lot, retool things? Will it be the Black University, which to me seems like the next logical thing? We want to do that in a space that invites everyone, narrative and not narrative, thinking about how to do that. And so we're at that space, but there is no complete ending. So odds and ends for me was interesting because, of course, this week we also note the anniversary of the passage of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And we talked about that a little bit on the air on Sirius, and just blessed and fortunate to be able to do that in that space. And all of us there, again, grateful for you having curated it, Prof. Hunter, and brought us all into that space. And when I think about the 14th Amendment, what popped in my mind was 14-1, like odds. 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment is not a self-enforcing amendment. It is one of the handful of amendments in the United States Constitution, which include amendments like the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, and the 15th Amendment, those three coming through Reconstruction, really the founding in many ways of the United States of America as far as African people are concerned, coming into the polity as citizens. At least the plurality of us, the majority of us coming in as citizens. Those amendments are not self-enforcing. They're not like the First Amendment. First Amendment doesn't have a clause. The Second Amendment doesn't have a clause. The Third, and Fourth, and Fifth, and Sixth, and Seventh, and Eighth Amendment don't have clauses saying that Congress shall enact legislation to enforce these amendments. Freedom of speech is there. You don't need an amendment, section of the amendment to enforce it. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, as with the 19th Amendment, women coming in. As with the amendment, it says they're lowering the voting age to 18. The 14th Amendment has a clause that said Congress shall have the power to enact legislation to enforce this. Well, then that raises a question. Is it a right? The same way that the First Amendment is freedom of speech is a right, freedom of association is a right. And there's a robust legal debate that will continue from now until the end of the United States, which probably will be long before 250 years from now. The question is it the same type of right? And there are those who would say, absolutely it is. And then the question becomes, well, why do you need an enforcement clause? Why do you need that? And this is what Beer Kavanaugh is relying on. And of course, we saw this with Bozo. Said that he wants to go back to the Supreme Court. You're a little early, Bozo. You'll be back. Whether it be with Clarence Thompson, Sam Alito, or whether you will have swapped them out for younger, eager racists. Either way, y'all will be back. You're going to keep biting at this apple until we knock all your political teeth out, which we're fully capable of doing. But again, I'm thinking about that because this is the anniversary. This was the anniversary week of the passage of the 14th Amendment. And the first thing came to my mind, 14-1. Who is the one? The human subject in the world. What is the 14th? The 14th is a piece of legislation, an amendment to the Constitution, which improves the U.S. Constitution, but then contains within it a way to perhaps evade the meaning of the actual amendment. So is it 14-1? Is it 14-1? Is it 14 against 1? What are the odds? So it just made me think about that. It was kind of odd. And then the 4th of July, which spilled over into the big boy birthday state fair. And we finally made it in to the big boy birthday state fair on Thursday. Talked about it on Friday. At Urban View Mornings, but said I was going to talk about it today because this official commemoration of the 250th anniversary of the criminal enterprise called United States of America through its Declaration of Independence is now ended. And there was an imagination a decade ago when the federal legislature, United States Congress, passed this legislation, anticipating a huge celebration, and we're old enough to remember the so-called bicentennial. I still collect those quarters when I see them. I've got dozens of them around here, who knows? And I remember I was a kid, of course, in 1976, 11 years old, but, you get caught up in this stuff. And, there's so many things that I have and have had, and over the years have collected and put in the archive that remind me of those times. And then, as I matured and started, getting books and building the library, I have a lot of books from that period. Congress had congressional and people associated with it, the histories and all, the fighting back, Benjamin Quarles and them. I'm just thinking about all the people who pushed back, the creation of a spate of museums, the most famous of which, of course, is the museum in Ohio, the National African American Museum and Cultural Center in Wilberforce, Ohio, in the middle of the country, and on the East Coast, the African American Museum of Philadelphia in 1976. I have the books and the articles and the journals and the magazines that talk about those battles to create those two places. So contrast that with 50 years after, when the widely anticipated convening of federal level led and subsidized conversations about the meaning of the United States never materialized because much of the commemorative and contemplative energy was consumed by a federal government that has been captured by a white nationalist regime. It's always been white nationalist, but we were pushing back differently and moving back and forth. And as Amir Baraka explains with the changing saying, the momentum of history, the momentum of society can swing way this way, but it's going to swing back the other way. And so we may be on the verge of the end of this current cycle of white nationalism and the white nationalist regime that is attempting to narrow rather than expand polity-wide memory and imagination. So what was anticipated as we're going to have robust discussions, arguments, knockdown, drag outs, and then reach consensus on certain things, other things agree to disagree, other things agree to agree on the meaning and nature of the U.S. 250 years after the founding of a criminal enterprise, was short-circuited because we let Bozo and his crew slither their way up into the house. By the way, Bozo's tearing up y'all house as we speak. I don't know if you all saw, he trotted his man up. Man, cut your hair, Doug Burnham.
You looking too much like Matthew McConaughey with that slick back hair, and you don't have any of McConaughey's star power in Hollywood. You just look like a clown. You and the governor of North Dakota with them silly ass cowboy hats on last week out there at Mount Rushmore, and now you running out trying to defend Bozo because they're getting ready to do something to those columns that are at the White House portico. He done tore up one wing. He tore that away. Now he getting ready to tear up y'all house and claim national security. So he had Burgum on making the rounds this week talking about, well, you know, where there's national security, the president, whatever. And then they put a big ass sheet over the portico column so you can't see him as he probably takes them out. When they take the sheet away, if they do, it's going to be gold and all kind of shit. Who knows? But anyway, I'm loving it. Bozo's tearing up y'all house. You ain't doing nothing about it. I have no dog in that fight, of course. So I just think it's hilarious. How far are you going to go somebody tearing up your house before you decide to stop them? I don't know. Maybe you won't go anywhere at all. But the point is they have captured the polity and the country's ongoing inability to either manufacture or negotiate some consensus around what this polity is, that the children can be taught. They've never been for public education, but that the children could be taught, perhaps, even as we are now in a post-literate age, according to Horowitz in her article in the Atlantic, or to forcefully reject its resurgent white nationalism and desperate attempts to, destroy everything except a narrow white nationalism. And it ain't even good white nationalism. I can appreciate a masterfully told white nationalism. This hillbilly horde stuff, this January 6th stuff, which is why they gave the contract to build and push the big boy birthday state fair. Part of the contracts went to the same company that set up the rally that sent them hillbillies over the ridge to attack the Capitol January 6, 2021. It's really, you can't really make this stuff up, nor should you try. So we're living through the end stages of a roughly 500-year period of Western global strength. They're already, they're always here. Here's the latest foreign affairs that came in the mail last week. Who will win the next war? The Council on Foreign Relations, and I've actually been reading a history of the CFR. Interesting. The mirage of China's military edge, which, in some ways, losing the war of the future, how new technologies threaten America's military advantage. It's interesting because you saw Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and a comedian professionally, clown Donald Trump at the NATO meeting this week, when Bozo sitting there pretty much let me respect the family of Mitch McConnell in this sorrowful time. But start to say brain dead, but I don't want to say that. I guess I did say it, didn't I? But shout out to Lane Chow, who finally came back from China. Took some pictures of the Great Wall, then came back. She said, nothing would change. My husband's condition doesn't require me to be there. However she phrased it. I'm like, wow, you really tell us something without telling us something, Madam Billionaire. But unlike Mitch McConnell, Donald Trump still walking around, still has some brain function, but it's so severely diminished that as he sat there with Vladimir Zelensky this week and asked Zelensky, would he go to Moscow to talk? And Zelensky replied, no, there's too many Ukrainian drones there right now. Bozo didn't even get the joke. The drone warfare is the war of the future until somebody pushes the damn nuclear launch codes, use these launch codes to push the button. You got to get this guy out to paint, y'all. But that's what they're writing about in Foreign Affairs, because we've reached the end of the 5-century period of Western global strength. And they're scurrying to try to figure out what is going to replace the old world order. They've been doing that since 1945. But as the order it birthed becomes increasingly brittle, increasingly fragile. Rutte, right, the head of NATO, asked a question by a reporter, when Trump says all these things and you sit there quietly and just nod or don't say anything, how does that affect your self-respect? I'm like, I see you. Go ahead. No, you ain't, whatever answer you give is irrelevant. In asking the question, the man diminished you. But Bozo's Freedom 250 State Fair was a fitting illustration of the weakness in a larger global white or Western global strength, which is almost the same thing. As that thing diminishes, its greatest West Atlantic set of colonies between the French and the English in particular, also the Spanish, the United States of America, at a moment when it could have had some very interesting and necessary conversation about what's here, what's possible. Because of that surrender, gave over to Bozo, who was the avatar for the white nationalists in their dying moment, the big boy birthday bashes, wrestling on the White House lawn. So many damn fireworks that it, for a moment, created Washington, D.C. as the most air polluted city in the world temporarily for a few hours. And then the big boy state fair. We couldn't get in Thursday for last, but this Friday made it down. This Thursday made it down. Why? Because it closed the next day. So y'all can't go. I'm sorry, but I went for you, so you ain't got to go. So today, I thought that we could, last week since we proposed moving beyond 250, reframing time and space, today we are going to use the ongoing work, our collective work, to set the framework for what we'll do the rest of this year, and hopefully from now on, in one way or the other, which is use our deep study, use our real-time responses to increasingly desperate acts of white political violence. Because this is a conversation, as you say, Prof, we've been having this conversation, and we've had our whole life, but because of these platforms, we have them now in ways where we become more aware of this scale and the scope of our conversation and how those common denominators keep coming back. And you talk about callers calling in and having a resonant chord for certain collective experiences, thereby, reinforcing the fact that we all have, or so many of us have, these collective experiences. We had a moment like that this week. Another, race confrontation between a small town police force in Indiana and a sister just trying to go to work. And then call after call came in with advice, with similar experiences. We know your first objective is to survive encounter with the law. And beyond that, we want to change it, whether it means by moving. Shout out to Brother Anthony and the folks at Quilombo in Atlanta who talked about his journey in these overly white policed spaces, and then transitioning through a whole lifetime of work till finally able to make it to safe port and safe harbor. He and his wife as educators and family in Atlanta with Quilombo, near and dear to my house. Shout out to the Heart, shout out to the House of Umoja and all the folks there. But that struck a resonant chord in the conversations we were having. And that's because we have similar experiences. We need to move beyond 250. And that doesn't mean move beyond 250 to find an alternate set of dates. It means moving beyond 250, moving beyond 1776 and 1619, which, as far as I'm concerned, can only at its greatest aspirational point be the same date in terms of relationship to a social structure rather than to each other, no matter how much we try to negotiate the difference. Today, we use these ongoing years of collective work and study and conversation to engage in a thought exercise we're going to do today, grounded in another way of organizing historical time. The question is not simply what happened in 1619 or 1776 or 1865, 1861 to 1865. The deeper question is, why do we use those dates to organize our thinking in the first place? That's the question. It's a question we've been asking all along here in class over the last 6+ years, but we're going to continue to come to it because, as was written in the Atlantic, repetition becomes important, not only in oral and back and forth, and we have a living archive, of course, now, which I'm very happy to have been part of and understand that now endures, even as the written word endures. But we're going to continue to do it and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and add and extend and invite into larger conversation, because it is the form repetition increasingly in a what has been called a post-literate age, which I will never surrender the question of literacy, having being part of the group of human beings who created reading and writing. And so Africans were oral. Yeah, every human in the world is oral. And you know who created the first writing beyond the physical form, whether it be the voice or the fingers or any other way to inscribe something? It was the Africans writing on cave walls. It was the Africans writing in the dirt and dust. It was the Africans creating writing systems and writing literally on the walls, which is why we go to Egypt over and over and over again to continue to listen and be in conversation with our ancestors. So I'm never going to abandon the writing, never going to abandon the reading of writing. But in that process, the deeper question of why we use these dates to organize thinking in the first place, because dates are a form of writing. This could be day one, year one, month one, if we wanted to mark it there now, but it's not. We call it July the 11th as we're recording this and being in conversation right now, and now will endure as 7/11/2026. Arbitrary numbers, all of them. Arbitrary numbers linked to observation, linked to astronomy, linked to the narrative form of containing numbers, but at the same time, an expression of meaning that we have agreed to either through coercion or simple acceptance that came out of the minds of humans that could be changed immediately. We could name every month of the year if we decided to keep the year. And of course, we invented the 12-month calendar. The Egyptians certainly had it as early as anyone. 12 months of 30 days each. And after that, the leftover days, the leftover 5 1/4 days grouped into festival days. There are many ways to do it, divided into seasons that are relative to the planting, harvesting, and fallow seasons in an agricultural-based society. We could have done it any number of ways. But now, as we ask, why do we use these dates to organize our thinking in the first place? What are the odds that we can use this season of endings to harness the momentum of memory for a different and improved collective purpose? I think the odds are quite good in our favor. So let's look at this. Told you we went down to the Big Boy State Fair. And those of you who grew up in a certain region of the United States of America and a certain time are familiar with Shoney's Big Boy. Or Frisch's Big Boy. I'd never seen a Frisch's Big Boy till I moved to Ohio and saw the statue outside of Big Boy with the redhead kid with the slingshot in his back pocket. I grew up in the South of the country where they got Shoney's Big Boy, the white kid with the brunette hair holding a hamburger up with the checkered overalls, Big Boy on it. And so I think of Bozo as Big Boy because as a child, when they stick a funny little hat on your head and give you a party favor, and they give you a big piece of cake. Oh, he's such a big boy. This man is, I infantilize Big Boy, Bozo, Big Boy Trump, because he's an infant. At the peak of his physical and mental capabilities, certainly given his proven and demonstrated affiliation with miscreants like Jeffrey Epstein, he was nothing to write home about, except unless you were trying to protect your children from predators. And he is nowhere near the height of his physical and mental powers. In fact, he's so greatly diminished now that he enters the world stage every time he enters the world stage as a joke, as a punchline. And it should frighten anyone who wants to hold this polity up as somehow going to endure in this current cycle for much longer. There's an ending coming. And what are the odds that it's going to survive? Who will survive America? As Amiri Baraka would say, very few Negroes, no crackers at all. And when Gil Scott Heron says, who will survive in America, he's raising a question that for me resonates if no other way, and it does many other ways, but if in no other way, it raises a question, who is going to do something about this untenable set of circumstances? So, thinking about the Big Boy birthday fair, what I saw there at the Big Boy State Fair, what I saw is a Eurofuturism. We talk about Afrofuturism. Is it Eurofuturism? And by Euro, I mean white. Is it white futurism? I was trying to figure out a word that could be equivalent to Afrofuturism and then realize that there really is no word. So it could be white futurism. This is a fever dream staged by white pathologists. They can't stop immigration. They can't control the wombs of every female in the country, although they think they can. And they can't calibrate birth so that white births outstrip black births or non-white births, even as in the demographic, the birth rate is down for everybody, but it's higher for non-whites than it is for whites. But they can push viral propaganda, try to pound us into submission by harnessing our brains to technology and shaping our memory and our thoughts in ways, relying on this moment when we are entering, if you can trust what Rose Horowitz has written in The Atlantic, that as she says, the end of reading is here. We're in a post-literate age, because she says Donald Trump, if anything, is a post-literate president, sitting with Junior Varsity Vance's wife in an interview. And when she asks him, well, what do you read? And he says, well, I read the paper. stories about me. And she just sat there. Of course, she just sat there, you know, different than anybody else who is complicit. You're complicit. But in this post-literate age, what does it mean to walk up in the Big Boy State Fair in the moment when they literally took the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence of this country and threw it in the trash in favor of something that was so stunningly absurd that I just have to relate to y'all. Let me do a little recap here. When I went down last week, just the swag bag from the Big Boy State Fair. They was handing these out at the end, right? Religious Freedom 250. If my people. Yeah, this is not from the Big Boy State Fair. They got a QR code that I'm not going to show y'all because why the hell would I promote that? But this wasn't the Big Boy State Fair. The Big Boy State Fair, as we talked about last week, was called Freedom 250. The decade-long congressionally subsidized, meaning your tax dollars at work celebration was called America 250. And as we talked about last week, they took the money from America 250 and funneled it to their criminal enterprises. And then they paid out of this money they raised, and most of it, I'm sure they didn't spend. That's going in Bozo's bank account, but his sons. But it's such a commingling, you couldn't tell the difference. So when we got down there, they were handing out books. This is one of them. The Fall and Rise of Jerusalem, the Great Controversy Between Good and Evil. This is by E.G. White. Amazing Facts. Jerusalem, the great spiritual center of the world. Now, here's the thing. They were handing these books out by the thousands. Well, actually, no, by the hundreds. Why? Because there wasn't thousands of people down there. And it showed y'all this was originally published under the title The Great Controversy, published by Amazing Facts International. You know who these people are? This lady here, E.G. White, she and her husband, they were at the head of the Seventh-day Adventist movement. So I took the book. Oh, yeah, you know, and I said, wait a minute, hold on. Oh, y'all Seventh-day Adventists, right? Oh, yeah. I'm thinking, now I didn't say this because why? I'm there doing reconnaissance. I'm not here to join the Big Boy Birthday State Fair. This is all outside before you go through security. So I'm like, I would think that the Seventh-day Adventists would be against Bozo. Right? Because y'all against demagogues and things like that. And sure enough, here's another pamphlet they put out, American Bible Prophecy, Religious Freedoms. They handing these out. They had thousands. I'm sure they had tens of thousands. I'm sure they had to take a bunch of them on. Who is the Antichrist? Yikes. I mean, this is slick publications. This is why we need money for our own stuff too. Someday, I'm sure some black people 7 minutes. I mean, the beast from the land. I'm sure this is AI. You got Thomas Jefferson in here. Well, you got the goat. Y'all know what that is. Let me stop doing this. I'm gonna scare no children. But anyway, this kind of stuff they was handing out, right? So now I'm surveilling because none of this got to do. This is not directly the Big Boy Birthday people. That's the billionaires and everybody else and stole this money, stole your tax money. This is certainly not the Smithsonian or Congress, America 250. So I'm looking for, where is, here we go. There's the Smithsonian Castle, the Smithsonian's Commemorative Guide to America's 250th birthday. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Here's our friend and brother, great Dr. Lonnie Bunch, smiling. This is the 14th Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, first black person. Welcome from the Secretary. They was doing the best they could. It's about the 250 years of Smithsonian of America's story, table of contents, celebrate the nation's 250th Beyond the Mall. So Beyond the Mall, I knew about Beyond the Mall, so let me see what they're going to say. Now they're naming all the museums. They're naming the themes they did. They're naming all this, but the problem is, and then they tell you where to go, the Smithsonian Castle, and the Renwick Gallery, and the National Museum of Natural History, Arts and Industries Building, the Art Museum, Postal Museum, Smithsonian Gardens, National Museum of American Indian. I've spent a great deal of time at all these places. The NPG, National Portrait Gallery, Smithsonian's National Zoo, the National Museum of African American History and Culture. These are all the places in the Smithsonian system on the mall. But they had made a decision to farm a great deal of this out to their affiliate museums across the country, beyond Bozo's reach. Unless you could get these kids to come in here and edit everything. But here's, as we've talked about before, people don't really be in museums like that. And when they're in there, young people especially be on their phones. Everybody be on their phones now. So I was looking like, man, y'all really couldn't, what Bozo did most effectively is destroy the idea of a shared experience. That's what we're really talking about. And so I'm not going to show y'all any more of this propaganda that was in this bag, and this other stuff that I went around collecting. I just wanted to give you a level set, just that garbage they was throwing. But I completely support their right to do it. The First Amendment, which is self-enforcing. Do it. Lonnie Bunch of them did the best they could, but what I want to really get to, this was the day I went down there and couldn't get in because they said the people was falling out, and so they had to close. This is the day, before July 4th. Fine. Then went back this week. What did I see? I didn't see one white person, all black people, and I shot some footage, but I didn't show y'all. All black people. In fact, I didn't see, and I'm sure there were some non-black people, but all I saw was black people. You get down there, they got these concrete barriers up. You got to go through to get to the security checkpoint to check your stuff and go in. So it's all black people, almost all brothers, some sisters, but mostly brothers, in the yellow vests and whatever uniform with this company that they had, I guess, hired them, directing. Okay, go this way. Okay, can't come this way. Go around here. Go around that cone. Okay, so thank you, brother. Thank you. You can go through. Now we're at the checkpoint. And it's all black people checking the bags, like at baseball games or museums, wherever, it's just probably minimum wage. And, it's a quick job I can get between whatever else I'm doing. And so, it's temporary. So they checking bags, they're not checking bags. You ain't supposed to bring no bags down there. So I'm coming down there with nothing except the stuff in my pockets. Well, I keep in my pocket, I keep my eraser, I keep my pen, my pencil, my mechanical pencil. These are tools of work and wallet, whatever else. So the brother's like, oh, you can't take that in. Take what in? My pencil? Yeah, it could be used as a weapon. Bruh. What are you talking about? He said, well, you could punch somebody with that. So at that point, I pulled my keys out a little bit. I said, you see this? Then I put the key in between like this. I said, what's the difference between this and this? This pen, this pencil. Oh, I'm just following the rules. Okay, let's look at the rules. Come on. So I'll go to the sign. Meanwhile, over his shoulder, big white cop standing there looking at me like I'm a problem. I'm really not talking to the brother alone. I'm also talking to you, Hillbilly Horde supporter. So I said, let's look at it. At the end, it's got that same catch-all number, like number 24 or whatever, that they have in all most contracts. It's like the catch-all. Anything else we didn't think of, right? It says, anything else that is determined by the discretion to be hazardous or dangerous. I said, you see that word discretion? That means you can let me in with this. He said, no, I can't. I said, well, who can? Because it says discretion. If you don't have the discretion, even though you're the one touching this stuff, who has the discretion? At this point, the cop, with that kind of Chicago PD move where they put their hands up in their vests. Now he done stood up because after all, it's a very phallic movement. Oh, well, I see you. I ain't looking at you because you don't regard you don't regard that I'm a human being, and I resemble that remark. In fact, that contempt is mutual, my friend. So here comes another black dude, shorter black dude. He says, "Oh, you can't take that pencil in." I said, "So you have the discretion?" No, who has the discretion, brother? That's what I want to know. Because what you want me to do is throw my pencil away, right? He said, well, yeah, you'd have to discard it. And then the other brother says there are pens in the display. You can go into the states and get pens. I said, so let me get this straight. You want to take my writing instrument, and then 100 feet from now, I'm going to go in there and get another writing instrument that I could use to do what you think I might do with this instrument the same way. At this point, one of them is trying to suppress laughter. The other dude is like, And the cop is frozen. Why? We just having a conversation. And you mad because as far as in your world, I can imagine you want all of us back on a boat somewhere. But guess what? You can just got to stand there and clutch your vest. Clutch your vest, big boy. Because I'm going to the Big Boy State Fair. I already worked out in my mind what I'm going to do. I'm not going all the way back. I know what I'm going to do, but I'm just playing with y'all now. I said, okay, so I'm going to go. I'll be back. Went to my friends at the National Gallery of Art, 2 blocks away. Went into the coat check room, told the young lady, I'm going to leave my stuff in here and get a little coat check because these people across here are crazy. She laughed. Okay. Pen, pencil, and here. Yeah. Came back. Some good? You want my kids, right? No. The brother said, I teach at a charter school. Why I got to know that? But I understand. I'm having a governance conversation with this man who's being held hostage. Oh, by the way, they said that who had the authority to say, who told them to tell people to throw away all their pencils and pens, even though you're going to get some more when you go through, was the Secret Service. I'm sure that's what they were told to say. Who knows? I didn't want to get into it because by now the cop is mad. He can't do nothing. So I said to the brother, oh man, that's good. I patted him on the shoulder. I said, I'm glad to hear that. I said, I'm sure your students use writing instruments every day. He just started laughing. The man's a hostage. I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you reckless or slick, bro. We all know what it is. Get your minimum wage. Get your money between the time you are teaching in the spring and teaching again in the fall. Checking people's bags at the big boy birthday or checking people's stuff at the big boy state fair. It's all right. And it's cool. Now we laughing. So we sail on there. Start going through the stalls. I'm not going to go through the stalls. Went to almost all the states. Couple got missed. And a couple ain't bring nothing. You should have seen them. They ain't putting nothing down there. Louisiana. When Louisiana, they had a quiz thing going on. First question was, who was the, and I had to be careful. I don't want to go nowhere by myself. So I twisted the arm of my former student, now professor at University of Maryland. Which one? Not College Park, not Eastern Shore. I always think about College Park and Eastern Shore first, the HBCU, Baltimore County, UMBC. So I twisted Dr. Angela Carter. I said, come down here if you're not busy, because she's getting ready to do some other stuff. And oh yeah, I'll come. Okay, so we walk down. Train got down, you got down. Okay, fine, no problem. And so walked in, and it's just like, all right, which way we going first? First thing you see is the arch. That arch was trash, garbage. It's like I could almost smell it. Remember, they had to fix it because the stuff was oozing out the side. Then across the street is the Ferris wheel. I almost felt sorry for these people because these white people then got on this damn Ferris wheel and they wouldn't start the Ferris wheel until it was full. And so there was a line, but not a big line. And so what you see suspended in the air in these little things is all the white people who are in the little getting baked by the sun little boxes. And they aren't completely full, so they got to put some more people in, You just sitting up here. I didn't ever see the Ferris wheel circle, so I don't know if they ever got to the critical mass of people that they did it. And I would never get on nothing Donald Trump paid the bill because, it's going to fall apart. We busted up into Louisiana, and none of these booths, it was two long lines of tent with some cheap press board and metal. And then they divided them by dividers you put up like in a classroom when you had no walls, you put the divider. That was what was dividing what almost looked to be, 15 or 20 feet by 15 or 20 feet cubes for the states. We're going in. All right, where you want to go? All right, well, let's just start. The car's from Pennsylvania. We go to Pennsylvania. Went in there. Oh, it was terrible. Little Keystone had a fake Liberty Bell in there. It's hilarious. So let me go to Alabama. Well, my mama from Alabama. So what did they have? In Birmingham, they love the governor. Okay, give me one of them. I'm going to take you. I'm trying to get very little stuff. Meanwhile, we looking at hillbillies with big old clear bags that they didn't got all the stuff they can get. And I'm feeling bad for some of these people. Like, you done spent your life saving some of y'all children are billionaires. You got money. So I'm like, this is the big boy state fair. Ain't nobody there though. It's little crowds in the places, many of the states. Florida, Texas, lines out the door. Figured out in Florida because every time one person left, they let one person in. These hillbillies from Florida, shout out to the pufferfish Ron DeSantis, they done so jack this up that you can't just have a natural flow. You so anal, one person leave, one person comes. So it's like 50 people in the line. That was by far the longest line we saw. Most people, like Puerto Rico, very few people. They had Roberto Clemente's jersey on display. I ain't mad at Puerto Rico. Okay. And also a big tower of rum, saying they're the rum capital of the world. So they had like 24 or 25 rum bottles in this circular tower. It's like, And so looking at this, I'm trying to get a rhythm of this, having done a little bit of research, but really wanted to experience it first. So each state clearly has a politics at play. It really looked like you were walking through the airport. In fact, Angela made this observation. It really looked like you walking through the airport You know, you go through airports and they got brochures and stuff. Imagine that, and that's each state. Okay. Went in Louisiana, had a big ass Mardi Gras head coming in, which took up too much space because it's small little places here. And you can hear what's going on at least one booth in each direction outside of the place you are, because they got dividers. They don't even go from the ceiling to the floor. They just divide so you can hear whatever's going on. So this dude is on the microphone. We come in. He got a little one of them little microphones you have at a party or something. Okay, we got some more people coming in. Can you answer our quiz? And he points to the side, and they got a little digital display, a little TV, and it's got questions coming up. So he says, can you answer this question? Says, who from Louisiana is considered the mother of gospel music? And before the ABC didn't come up, the card says, Mahalia Jackson. It's funny. I love how these young people, these Philly cats, you get the irritated look on your face, like Mahalia Jackson. So the guy says, well, what? We have a winner. Throw me a pair of sunglasses. And from the back, 20 feet behind, is this white woman with a tub full of plastic sunglasses. She reaches in, gets one, tosses the sunglasses. He catches them and gives them to Angela. These are the sunglasses. He's in there. Now, these are her sunglasses. You keep your sunglasses. Because then he asked me a question. Which of these four people here are considered, no. They put the picture of the guy up and says, he's the father, considered the father of which form of music? I said, Zydeco. Before it came up, he said, what, who are y'all? Wait a minute. Throw me a pair of sunglasses. Boom, here we go. So we go walking out with the sunglasses on. Now, if I don't look like a rube right now, you're just being polite. So anyway, so we're walking out the big boy birthday state fair. Now, y'all, what y'all can't see? I don't know if you can, let me see if I cover up. What you can't see, if you look through these glasses, there's a little rose color. I said, you can't make this up. We got on rose-colored glasses at the big boy state fair. I'm like, man, let me take these glasses off before we get transported to an alternate universe. Maybe on Mars with Elon Musk. My point is this. The jokes write themselves. What are the odds that we would go in a place and get some rose-colored glasses to come down and look at these 15 people at the big boy state fair? And from there, you know, like I said, Mississippi was tragic in a sense because Mississippi is Black culture. It is the culture of African people. And so you really can't puff up William Faulkner but for so much. You really can't pump up Magnolias but for so much. They're giving out little buttons. It's Mississippi, Magnolia State, and this kind of thing, you know. But as they were doing it, I'm saying, you know, because we were saying that, you know, we were talking and said, Mississippi is all Black. I don't know how they're going to pull this off. And sure enough, you go around, they got a little Morgan Freeman there. Okay, Morgan, he's acceptable. And then they had Elvis, of course, everywhere. And then you turn a corner and they had a wall with all the music and all the culture that came out of Mississippi. And it was 80% Black. Oh, there go Muddy Waters. That's why I was looking for you, Wolf. Okay, Muddy Waters and that. Everybody. No Margaret Walker Alexander, even though you're Dora Welty and all. But the stuff now, I say, yeah. They can't hide it. You can't have a Mississippi. I mean, it's not possible for you to white unless you ain't gonna have nothing. And then we went into Maryland. I don't know what Westmore and these Negroes in Maryland had to do with this, but I want to particularly thank the state of Maryland, because some of these states look like they was trolling the big boy birthday. And we went into the Maryland tent, the Maryland division, and saw there was an artist there, a Black man who, let me see, I took a picture. Hold on. I took a picture of his display. And I said that I wanted to make sure today. I told him and his sister were with him. I don't know. They were older folks. He's a collage artist. He had some beautiful stuff there. And if you give me 5 minutes, I thought, the big boy birthday arch. I ain't gonna show y'all all these pictures. This is hilarious to see all this. Oh, wait. Here's the sister who was helping him. She got on a PG Prince George's County shirt. She's like, sis, what y'all doing? He said, oh, you know, we got an artist, we got a resident artist today. His name is Curtis Woody. Curtis G. Woody, mixed media collage painter. He had some remarkable, about 20 different poster size, then larger size, smaller size collages. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, all these guys. It was like, wow. So we asked him, hey man, what are you? And he's signing because people are buying some of the stuff. Not a lot of people there, but the people said, what you doing, man? I said, oh man, this is, they rotate artists. Maryland had a different independent small artist in there every day of the Big Boy State Fair. And it occurred, okay, this is how some of the states are fighting back. I think our general consensus was Maryland won the Big Boy State Fair. And it was remarkable because it was so clearly rushed and convened that you couldn't make up how absurd it was. So what we saw, the thing that most people were obsessed with, the children, a handful of them that were there, I would say if I had to spitball a guess is the number of people we saw from damn near the Washington Monument, not the Washington Monument, damn near the United States Capitol, all the way back toward the other direction. I would say probably, if there were 1,000 people, now I said 1,000 and it wasn't 1,000 people, maybe 500, I don't know. And that's everywhere, over blocks and blocks. You know what I'm saying? Close to a mile. And all because it wasn't just that, they had a rodeo. No, I'm sorry. No. They had a sign that said rodeo. And in the middle of the street, they had what looked to be about maybe 150 feet wide and maybe 50 feet across, patch of dirt encircled by a little fence that a baby could step over. And I guess that's where they claimed they had the rodeo, although I did not see one animal there. And then beyond that, they had a stage near the Capitol. And Lee Zeldin, the head of the EPA, was up there ranting about the freedom to repair, like fix cars and stuff. It was absurd. The speech he was giving, there were probably about 10 or 15 cameras there recording him. And there were more cameras than people. There was one American Negro who was skinning and grinning in a hot ass suit, and they keep taking pictures of him. I said, this must be the representative Negro here. He didn't look like Byron Donalds, but he had that energy. So at any rate, like, this is absurd. So what the people were obsessed with, though, who were there, the handful, they would come in and they had stamps where you stamp your passport. Now, the Smithsonian has stamps. They have a passport where you go to any national park in the country and your kid or you can get your passport stamped. I've seen them everywhere. And they have tokens, too. I get tokens everywhere. But this is the one they made up. The Great American State Fair. Whatever. And then look at these poor, is this now, they stamping these pages. It was pathetic. I'd have felt sorry for them, except Big Boy put y'all up to this. They stamping, and the people working in the booths clearly been hired like last minute. There are various levels of lethargy, unenthusiasm. The ones who were enthusiastic were so clearly so extra that it was like, wow, really? And then we went into the long pavilion where it was supposed to be, I suppose, kind of like a capstone experience. There was a C-SPAN table. And at the C-SPAN table, they had so much merchandise. Well, I'm sorry, they had so many of these. This is what C-SPAN was reduced to. A ruler with the presidents of the United States on it. And two old white dudes sitting there like, can we have some? Oh, you take as many as you want. This is what C-SPAN been reduced to. The Smithsonian had a table with one person sitting there. It was pathetic. It was absolutely pathetic. It's the Big Boy birthday bash. And I'm raising this because the nexus, I thought about, this is Eurofuturism. This is what they see as the future of the country. And I'm telling y'all right now, if the future of the United States is what we saw down there at the Big Boy State Fair, forget 50 years from now, 50 months from now, it's over. It was so dead. We saw a handful of black folk, and all black people working, checking bags and stuff. There was a black sister and brother who were giving away water. So we already got some water because it was hot. But the moral is, if this is Eurofuturism, this mayonnaise Eurofuturism, and it wasn't even the range of whiteness, it was sad. And so, governance at the nexus of this, let's think about this. And this is where I want to turn for the rest of our time together, a few minutes here. Governance is the logic that we have to anchor ourselves in an Africana studies framework, not a social structure logic with its necessary myth-making? Does that divide our loyalty? What is loyalty after all? What is fidelity? Colorblind constitutionalism? We talked about that last week. What does it mean to be loyal? I was reading a piece in Freedom Ways. I was putting some Freedom Ways away a couple of weeks ago. And this is Freedom Ways from 1974, Freedom Ways magazine. You know, Shirley Graham Du Bois, Keith Baird, John Henry Clark, Margaret Burroughs, so many, Ernest Kaiser, the great John Jack Odell. This is the issue. You see Ben Chavis on there still with us. This is volume 14, number 2, 1974. So, of course, talking about Coleman Young. But there's an article in here on the Phyllis Wheatley Poetry Festival in Jackson, Mississippi, the great Margaret Walker, who wasn't mentioned in the state of Mississippi. I'm not complaining because I see y'all put up basically a bunch of airport booths. But this is what Charles Roll and Jerry Ward wrote at the time. They say the festival was indeed a timely accounting. And of course it was, because you brought together a bunch of sisters to have this poetry festival at the behest of Margaret Walker Alexander at Jackson State University, something they just celebrated the anniversary of a couple of years ago, the 50th anniversary. And they write, beyond acknowledging the achievement of Phyllis Wheatley, the festival recognized the creative endurance and historical contribution of the Black American woman. Alice Walker particularized this aspect of the festival in her poetic essay, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. Each of the women poets was in her own way a Phyllis Wheatley, or at least a spiritual daughter of Phyllis Wheatley, who expresses herself against the odds. Finally, they write, it is significant that the festival was held on the campus of a Southern Black college. With some regional chauvinism, we suggest that through the creative genius of Margaret Walker, the Black South truly remembers, quote, how many silent centuries sleep in its sultry veins. For it was in Mississippi, not the Massachusetts in which she was purchased. In Jackson, not the Boston that lauded this, quote, exotic, end quote, African woman and soon forgot her. In the South, not the North, that Phyllis Wheatley was given a fitting and usable memorial, perhaps the Phyllis Wheatley Poetry Festival in 1973, and the bicentennial years, this is 3 years before 1976, which is, of course, 50 years ago this summer, will mark a new forward thrust of creativity in the Black South. Perhaps, unlike the 60s, the 70s will be a decade for the overdue recognition of Black Southern genius. What are the odds? Because the Phyllis Wheatley Poetry Festival ended. And the revival of the memory of that festival, while women like Sonia Sanchez still walk the earth and Eleanor Traylor still walked the earth a couple of years ago when they did the 50th anniversary there, is a reminder that we can recover the momentum of memory, but that it is not a natural event. It requires us to deliberately recover it. And the odds for our recovery greatly diminish when we do not focus on study, when we don't focus on doing that kind of work. And we do that recovery work here week after week, day after day, hour after hour. And we are joining others who have been doing it from the beginning of our journey in this criminal enterprise. And what we will never do is allow ourselves to shrink that memory to fit Eurofuturism or white futurism, like I saw at the Big Boy birthday parade. And sad, not even the parade, because, you know, again, all that stuff got washed out of the Big Boy Birthday State Fair. But our challenge, as these writers wrote in 1974 about a conference that took place in 1973, and where they referred to the bicentennial of the United States, which was coming, and saying that Phyllis Wheatley may have been captive in Boston, but we are in a center of Black governance, this historically Black college with this sister, and they have convened in order to regain the momentum of memory, movement and memory, to engage in that work in a governance space of self-determination, pursuant to a way of knowing that would have them connected to a woman they didn't meet, but a woman who represents this form of cultural meaning making through her writing that connects us. And through using the science and the technology of the written word, Phyllis Wheatley, or Fatima, as many scholars have kind of reached a consensus, was probably one of her names, being a good Muslim girl snatched out of West Africa in the 18th century. Who is she to us? Remember, it is the Phyllis Wheatley story, the Fatima story, that triggers in many ways the creation of the conceptual categories we use in the debates and discussions we were having in 2005 when we put together the Africana Studies lessons that sat then at the heart of the mandatory African American history course in high schools in Philadelphia. But we also understand here, pursuant to what I really am talking about today, in terms of odds and ends, the oddness of the big boy state fair, the overextension past July 4th, and all these things. Periodization, time, is really not, it's not necessary to anchor any of these things in dates that diminish our humanity. It made me think about something that I remember in 1989 being in the Schomburg, when I was up there clerking for the NAACP Defense Fund in New York. And I went to the Schomburg one day just to go, because I'd never been. You know, I hear that Clark talking about it all the time. That being, everybody went to the Y there on 135th Street, and then went up in the Schomburg and spent the day in the Schomburg. And I'm just looking through microfiche and looking through different things, and I came upon something in the Pittsburgh Courier where Hubert Henry Harrison, the great thinker, the great writer, African son of the Caribbean, friend of Marcus and Amy Garvey and so many others, great speaker and writer, Hubert Harrison had said there is no such thing as a Harlem Renaissance. What? There's no such thing as a Harlem Renaissance? And he's writing in the Pittsburgh Courier in 1927. This during the so-called Harlem Renaissance. Whatever. It ain't no Harlem Renaissance. And I'll never forget scrolling that microfilm and printing out that paper. And, you know, over the years, I've looked for that paper. It's in storage with most of my other files and everything. But they published a Hubert Harrison reader, Jeffrey Perry, the good guy Jeffrey Perry, back in 2001. And I bought it, and I was looking through here, and there was he actually reproduced it. This is the reader, the Hubert Harrison reader. You've heard me talk about this many times before. And he's got the article on the Harlem Renaissance. This is where the newspaper was. I said, okay, this is what he says. He says, seriously, the matter of a Negro literary renaissance. And people say, well, you can say anything now. No, this is while it's going on, ostensibly. Seriously, the matter of a Negro literary renaissance is like that of the snakes of Ireland. There isn't any. So I'm telling you, people say, oh, during the Harlem Renaissance, he just be repeating. Just a little reading. He says, those who think that there are usually people who are blissfully ignorant of the stream of literary and artistic products which have flowed uninterruptedly from Negro writers from 1850 to the present. If you ask them about the historical works of Major Joseph T. Wilson, that's the Black Phalanx, George Washington Williams, William C. Neal, Colored Patriots in the American Revolution, William Wells Brown, y'all know him, Rufus L. Perry, yes, Atticus G. Haygood, the essays of Timothy Thomas Fortune, the fictional writings of Negroes from Francis E. Watkins to Pauline Hopkins, Paul Laurence Dunbar, Charles Chestnut, they stammer and evade to cover up their confusion. And if anyone who thinks that this is true only of casual colored people, I beg him to consider the following case. Then he goes on. But what he says here is, you pick any 10 years between 1850 and now, and I'll show you just as many or more writers and artists and musicians and everything than in this period you call in the Harlem Renaissance. Why do I bring that up? When we think about dates and time and space, we have to free ourselves from any framework that is going to tie us to a number when its real objective is to tie us to that number and thereby tie us to a false sense of memory or a narrowed sense of memory, even with the 250th notion. The big boy birthday bash wrestling match, the big boy state fair, the big boy parade that got canceled, all of that. This country allowed these white nasties to hijack and run into the trash can any notion of using a ritual moment when you can gain for a moment in a society where the attention spans have been destroyed, a moment to think about things that could have been very powerful. And they didn't do it. But I think these tensions between who we are to each other and who we are to other people reveal the underlying realities that will allow us a chance to think differently. So we've reached the end of this year's ritual quarter between Juneteenth and July 4th. But now we lay the foundation for how we add to observe and change how we observe ritual quarters, I think. Let's try this for the rest of the year. How about we seize this ritual year, this so-called 250th, what's left of it, past July 4th, when now all the noise is diminished, the books have been published, the magazine articles have been written and all this kind of thing, the documentaries. Okay, now we passed that. Okay, by the way, shout out to everybody, my sister, Dr. Afia Zakia, all the people who were with us, the Lewis family and others who joined us when we read Barracoon in Nubia a couple of years ago, Chief and all the folks there, all the family members who came in and shared with us, many of whom are members of Nubia because everybody's gathered in Mobile this weekend for the annual festival where they recognize Africa Town. So y'all are down there now. Some of y'all may be watching. If you are, and it's live, shout out to y'all. Always love to you. For the rest of this year, we seize the ritual year to deepen, to delayer, to accelerate our jailbreaking trajectory. Because most of these people are going to stop after last weekend. It's over, ends. But what are the odds that we can use this momentum to continue? Everything. So let's think about that. What are some anchor dates? All right, we pause here. January 1st, December 31st. That's it. That's the calendar year that we use now. What is the ritual that spans the end of the calendar year and the beginning of the calendar year? Is Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is our governance protocol connector. So as we think about this Kwanzaa that will end this year, we think about from now on the renewal of commitments and reminder of the dedication to principled ways of knowing. The principles of Kwanzaa that you use profit the center of your practice every afternoon on Sirius and beyond in life. These are the principles. These principles distill from Africana practices that not only predate the United States of America, predate the invasion of this hemisphere, but go all the way back to classical Africa and beyond. So Kwanzaa becomes an anchor at the beginning and the ending of the year. Now, then we move to the Blackest History Month. I'm not thinking about dates now. I'm just using the calendar to give us anchors that don't force us into these 4-digit, 1865, 19, 2016, 19, 17, Kwanzaa, emptying forth, Blackest History Month, the tallying and the celebration of expansions of the work of memory recovery all year. We take Carter Whitson seriously in that moment. What does that mean? Whitson says this is the short period where we talk about and celebrate what we have done the entire year. So what we are doing today on the 11th of July, what we will do on the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, and then the 18th, we come back here next week. That's continuing work. And then we tally it. We should be tallying now. Imagine Blackest History Month 2027. Really something, not on a publication schedule, not on a documentary schedule, on a regular annual ritual convening that jailbreaks the notion of time and space and brings us together. Juneteenth. I'm just using some select moments. Juneteenth is repurposed as a liberation ritual day, connecting our discrete experiences. Well, it's Black American. It shouldn't be there. Hold on. Everybody who was trafficked has a version of Juneteenth. Stop thinking of it in relation to the social structure that you found yourself in. It's our Freedom Day. It's our Jubilee Day. It's our self-determination day. That's certainly how we've been celebrating it all along. And that's certainly how we celebrate it now. The more people get aware of it, the more it becomes clear that while July 4th, it is the British colonies versus Britain, Juneteenth is Africans versus everybody. I love this shirt I got from a black t-shirt company, the District versus Congress. I saw the District versus Congress at the Big Boy State Fair. Everybody checking the bags and directing traffic is from the district. Congress got hijacked by Bozo. So you walk up into the National Mall and it's like, well, we had one idea. The Smithsonian had something else. I mean, it was tragic. I got other stuff I could show y'all, but I'm not going to show y'all right now. And it's like, my point is that there's a versus. Juneteenth versus the 4th of July. Them two things can't be reconciled. Because of the 4th of July, we needed a Juneteenth. Yeah, duh. It ain't the same, ain't gonna be the same. The chance you had to be in conversation about maybe renegotiating something, the best ritual moment you had, you gave it over to the Big Boy birthday bash, the Big Boy wrestling match, the Big Boy State Fair. And then you didn't even fight back enough to have a full-throated pushback that you could have centralized somewhere. Maybe it could have been in Philly. I'm sorry, Mayor Parker, you spent $14 million and apparently the concert was cool, but now somebody's head got to roll in City Hall. Maybe it could have been convinced. Somebody should have had the resistance. Westmore is like, you know what, send some black artists in there just to give the middle finger to these cats, whatever. Or maybe not Westmore, whoever was delegated there. But shout out to Maryland, at least for some pushback. But my point is this. Our Juneteenth shouldn't be looked at relative to the social structure of this country. If you want to do that, put it on the periphery at the center. Repurpose it as a liberation ritual day that mirrors the days of emancipation in the Caribbean, that mirrors subsequently the days of the state formations in Africa. That is our natural notion, global self-determination and recovery. It's very easy. Then Black August is coming up. Remember, as we've talked about many times, and join with our comrades, and shout out to my brother Kalanji Changa. This last Sunday night, we spent a couple of hours on his Black Power Media YouTube channel, reminiscing about the days in the 80s and 90s and how we came into the African-centered education movement and all those things. So I want to thank you, brother, publicly for that. It was a beautiful thing. We did the live stream. It was just wonderful. And think about Black August. So they talk about Black August a lot, Black Power Media does. And, you know, a lot of political prisoners, you know, free political prisoners, self-determination. I take a moment here to recognize my friend and brother Chokwe Antar Lumumba, who settled his affairs with these people who were harassing him and accepted one count or one fraud count there in Jackson, Mississippi. Brother, we stand with you. I was glad to see Angela Rye and Bakari Sellers on their podcast, Native Land Pond, said we stand with Andrew Gillum as well in Florida. Who, of course, get caught up in some drug stuff. I'm saying you let Matt Gaetz slither out of the damn sewer and re-enter public life. Y'all can go to hell in Florida. Leave Andrew Gillum alone. And leave Antar Lumumba alone. He's a young man. He, his sister Rakia, and the whole family and the whole community there in Jackson and Mississippi and beyond. Y'all register to vote. Check your voter registration. Check and get out there and do what you need to do. There's a Black man running for Senate in Mississippi with some incredible ideas, just like a Black man is running in Kentucky. Shout out to both those brothers. Get out there and do what you need to do and stop this racial terror in the U.S. South. We have the numbers to do it. I just wanted to mention that. But self-determination is what Black August, which is a Black nationalist Pan-Africanist thrust. So many people who ended up in Mississippi, Antar and Rakia's father and mother, you know, Nubia and Chokwe, all of them ended up there. Amari Abubakari Obadeli and the great Hannibal Afrique and so many others ended up in Mississippi to make that Nubia Kush district, that Jackson district, a point of launching a straight self-determination act. Black August. Black August is a moment for introspection, for training, for remembering those who have put everything at risk and who have sacrificed the most. So that's another ritual day. So we got Kwanzaa, we got Blackest History Month, we got Juneteenth, we got Black August. These repurposed ritual days can lead us to think about ourselves in relation to each other. It's very important to understand which of these combating trajectories and compelling narratives has the best chance of surviving and thriving going forward in this season of endings. Who will survive in the world? And that means in America as well. Listen, it's very simple. I'm going to introduce these categories and then we're going to stop. I had thought initially about a month ago, but what I would do is put together a reimagining of the African experience in the United States based on 250 declarations. So an event for every year. And then I thought, no, because that might track too closely with what we always do. So I got a list and refined it. No, I'm going to do that. And I thought, what if we looked at it by trying to reconcile a calendar with a clustering? So you got 250. You could take an arbitrary dividing number. Let's say 50. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay, 250, right? And in an age of post-literacy, people might be able to come up with a cycle of 50s that might make more sense. So let's try it. 50 years, 1776 to 1826. In that 50-year arbitrary from the y'all declare war against your daddy, George III. You got a little window. Okay. What might that do? 1776 to 1826. What happens during that period? Well, David Walker was born during that period. Alexander Crummell, York went with Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea, Shaka Zulu, you know. This is also the period Toussaint Louverture died. Jean-Jacques Dessalines passed. Henri Christophe, Prince Hall, Paul Cuffey all passed away during that period. Where did I come up with that idea? Ken Burns, when he narrated his film on baseball, he would start with a period and then say, during these years, so-and-so was born, so-and-so was born, and then so-and-so died, and so-and-so died. He's trying to convene a sense of national unity around births and deaths. I said, we can do that. Again, I'm just throwing this out. We're going to end with this. So I said, okay, well, we could do that. But then what is happening in that 50-year window? It was happening before that and after that. But if I want to concentrate on a thing from a governance formation that we're doing in order to build a momentum of memory as we move through time and space, I'm saying, well, during this period, Africans, which is a self-definition term that really, it doesn't come into existence right then, but it's beginning to be used differently during this period. There's a self-definition that's being forged within which to populate a social structure definition of who we are from without. So you label us Guineas, you label us Negroes, you label us Africans, you label us niggers, you labeled us during this period. And we took that label during that period to fight to liberate ourselves in what becomes the United States and elsewhere. That 1776 to 1826 period is a period of Black self-determination that begins to use that label and take it and convert it into a weapon of self-determination. That's the Haitian Revolution. That's the founding of the African Lodge, the Prince Hall Masons, the AME Church in the United States. It's a fight and pushback. We see the creation of Fort Mose, Africans fighting against the United States and for themselves with some indigenous help. And at that point, even the British during the War of 1812 to 1814, during the so-called U.S. Revolution, you see this negotiated period. Let's go to the next 50 years, 1826 to 1876. A social structure rendering would say, oh, that ends with the centennial of the United States. No, we're not talking about social structure. We will take note of it on the periphery, but at the center, what are we talking about? Africans convening, planning, renegotiating the terms with the United States to benefit all of us. This is the period when Du Bois is born, Booker Washington is born, Harriet Tubman is born, Henry McNeill Turner is born, Pauline Elizabeth Hopkins is born, Samori Touré, whose grandson will lead them to liberation in Guinea. We're reading about that in the Second Emancipation now. Antonin Furman, the great Haitian intellectual who sees a global perspective, all them born in that next 50-year period, 1826 to 1876. Who makes transition during this period? Henry Garnett. Shaka Zulu makes transition. Oh, I should have mentioned that this is the period as well. We see the Nat Turner Rebellion. You see all of these things going on. What's going on? You have the convention movement, the Negro Convention movement in the United States. Should we stay? Should we go? All of this movement of Africans who are nominally not in direct captivity, not being trafficked in the United States, and thinking about global notions. This is the creation of movement and memory rituals. This 50-year period, the second 50-year period, everything from Watch Night to Juneteenth, the church homecomings, the Emancipation Day Jubilee rituals. We have that 50-year period where people are trying to find each other based on a common notion. This is the period of the Seminole Wars where the Africans and the indigenous people get together, and then you try to move them all down to Oklahoma, and we still fighting to understand our relationship between each other there. Shout out to the people out there in Tulsa that we all sat with, Mario Solomon Simmons and Tiffany Crutcher and everyone else. This is also when you try to ship us to Liberia, and some of us went. You try to ship us to Haiti, some of us went. Not because you told us to go, but because we're looking and searching for a place, as Martin Delaney and Robert Campbell would say, the next 50 years, 1876 to 1926. All Black self-determinating spaces crop up. This is the Black towns of Oklahoma. This is Rosewood in Florida, built behind the social structure veil that too many people are obsessed with. 1876 to 1926. By the way, like I said, Du Bois born in that previous 50 years, but in this 50 years, who do we have? John Henry Clark. The Garveys are born. John Hope Franklin, Nelson and Winnie Mandela, Rosa Parks, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Elaine Locke, Queen Mother Moore, Arturo Schomburg. This is we coming closer. This is the third 50-year chunk. All Black self-determining spaces. Everybody I named came out of Black spaces. Drawing on Africana governance, protocols, relying on ways of knowing, adapting the science and technology to create the Negro world, the newspaper, the crisis magazine, cultural meaning-making ways of knowing flourish in this moment. Who passed? Fred Douglass, Booker Washington, Harriet Tubman, Martin Delaney, Edward Wilmot Blyden. Martin Delaney makes transition before Harriet Tubman, but Harriet Tubman lives for a couple of a brief period of months. The same time Rosa Parks was on the earth because she was born during that period. The rise of most of our historically Black colleges during that third 50-year term, and the Western African formal schools, Achimota and all them, where Kwame Nkrumah went to school. They're not ideal. However, there's a notion that these people born during this period are going to leave their places to some form of self-determination. Garvey, touring the Caribbean and Central America, comes looking for Booker T. Washington before going to New York during that period, the next 50 years. 1926 to 1976. Somebody said, oh, I was born during that period. That's when we were born, right, Prof? Africans are forcing a second Reconstruction in the United States to build out Black power that they have built in the previous 50-year cycle. That before that, they had negotiated their way and fought their way out of captivity. And before that, they had used the label that you put on us to actually create a corporate notion of who they were as a group, which made something that never existed before, a Black community. So now we're in the next 50 years, 1926 to 1976, forging that second Reconstruction in the United States, forging independence movements in Africa, focusing on what? Education, segregated schools, creating our high point of cultural meaning making and movement and memory. This is the high point, y'all. That 50-year period between 1926 and 1976. Because as we fought, as Du Bois said, to change the laws in the United States, as we fought, as Nkrumah and Ture and all those people did in Africa, the Mandelas, as we fought, and they were still captive during this period. Nelson was. He goes to jail during this period. He comes out in the next period, which is the one that leads us to today. But as they are fighting that thing, they're saying we got to get educated. We got to get our memory together. We engage in these social movements. Who is born during that period? Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott, who becomes Coretta Scott King, Malefi Asante, Muhammad Ali, Louis Farrakhan, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Fela Kuti, Miriam Makeba, me and you. During that period. 50 years. And what you got to do? No, we're just taking chunks so we can think of ourselves very differently. Now, who makes transition during this period? Well, I mean, W.B. Du Bois, Kwame Nkrumah, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, Dory Ladner, Kwame Ture, John Edward Bruce, Arthur Schomburg. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I came up one more, not Kwame Ture. He's born during that period. Willis Huggins, Essie and Paul Robeson, during that period make transition. Kwame Ture comes into existence during that period. And then finally the 50 years, the last 50 years, 1976 to 2026, this is the years of our active work. Africans respond to the end of empire, to the endings. What are the odds? And an unrelenting assault on African organizations and thinking. You can call it desegregation and integration for all of its benefits. It really, as we are looking now, also was used as an ongoing assault on those independent institutions, whether it be towns like what happened in 250-year cycles before, whether it be schools, which came into existence in that second 50-year iteration, whether it be the church, whatever, the whole notion, and then the severing of memory that comes with institutions. Without institutions, people can tell you anything because you're in their institutions. And with the creation of science and technology that can penetrate you wherever you are, your memory's being amputated over the last 50 years. Who's born during that period? Julius Malema, Ibrahim Traore, Kendrick Lamar, Seun Kuti, LeBron James. Look at how the names may change a little bit. Who made transition during this period? Everybody from Quincy Jones to Nelson Mandela, Celia Cruz, Mary McCabe, Tony Cave, Mbari, Toni Morrison. Now we are in this moment. This last 50 years chunk that I'm talking about, this is a moment when we can begin to reflect on recovering the momentum of memory of not only those previous 4 50-year chunks, but the 250 before that, and the 250 before that, and the 250 before that. Using that, anchoring if we want to in this moment through our ritual days, whether it be Kwanzaa, the Blackest History Month of Black August, whether it be Juneteenth, whether it be any of these moments connected with the discrete governance formation of your birthday, your family reunion, the discrete notion of your homecoming, connecting it to these collective moments. And through that, when we get to the next ritual moment in a social structure, we can say, no problem, we will note it, but we're going to absorb it into our calendar, our self-determining governance calendar. And I think if we do that, we'll be in much better footing. So we got the rest of the year to work that out. Problem.
Hey, I think everyone should save the last 20 minutes and then run that. This reminds me of the clock that you did that
Yes.
changed my whole perspective. You just did that in that was so amazing. That was so amazing because it centers us in the midst of it. We get to find ourselves. Thank you so much. That was
no, thank you, Prof.
That was
Prof, I wish we could split ourselves into different bodies, because I would have loved to have been. Sam Nassau actually went. He's a big baseball fan, so he's going to bring us footage back from the Swingman Classic and the All-Star game. The Swingman Classic was this week in Philly. So to Ken Griffey.
Uh-oh.
Sure, we can. Ken Griffey Jr. and the HBCU All-Stars, it makes me sick what happened to this young brother, Johan Sandoval, who played for Savannah State. And now they saying he'd overstayed his visa. And I'm like, whatever. That's a lie. Y'all lied on that boy. Y'all have him detained. Let that man go. So he couldn't be in Philly. But they had the Swingman Classic. The American League won 6-1. I'm looking at the roster like, man, I wish I could have been in Philly. And of course, the East-West Classic was Juneteenth at Rickwood Field in Alabama, where we were before. Shout out to CC Sabathia. He is not letting that go. Just watching those little children. It reminded me of my little friend Nolan when I was down there. Children her age and a little older, getting coached in how to throw the ball and hit the ball. We got everything we need.
Yeah. And it's coming. Like, they keep overplaying their hand. You saw Claudia Scheinbaum, I think, is going to be suing for the number of Mexican nationalists that have been killed by ICE. You know, and these are human beings, right? So the son of the latest one came out, you know, it's like he 35 years been in this country, raised a family, was heading to pick up workers. He's building homes in Houston, and y'all killed him. Like, it's just doesn't matter. No, it matters. Nolan matters. All of the young people that are engaging in this time. It's happening though. You know, Cardi B out here using her platform, somebody who's, you know, you could challenge on lyrics or what have you, but she's very clear about the history of it. When they asked her on CNN, she's like, black people, the reason why. I said, okay, Cardi B's been reading or listening in on her children's lessons or something, but
no question.
using her platform to tell a story, to tell a narrative that we need to hear. So
that's right.
It'll come. Narratives are important, which is why we have to keep talking and sharing our own. But that was powerful. I just want to say I have a limited drop happening right now.
Wow.
Yeah. I love this. Yeah. Wait, hold on. Yeah, this right here. Okay. That's happening. It's happening. Yeah. All right. Just wanted to
are you gonna do it like that? Hey, y'all gotta run it back.
No. The drop is on the 20th. You know, when it's gone, it's gone. I just the global majority, once we realize that we are stronger together, as I'm listening to this book and they're doing these protests, even though the Patriot Front and all of the KKK, the Nazis, all they have to be in unison.
That's right.
What would it look like if we showed up in khakis with face masks on?
Oh no, you already know.
No, but wherever they are, if we showed up in those in greater numbers, wearing the same outfit.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it.
Or we could be like the sister who was so unbothered on the metro I ride every day. Like, hey, look, whoever took that picture, y'all run that lady her coin.
Come on.
And we're gonna find you. Don't act like we ain't gonna find you. But yeah, we surrounded by that every day. And they're so weak. You look at these little guys walking around, it's like, is it even worth it to say? It's like that punk cop that was standing there listening to me talk to these brothers. No, I'm talking to you too. Because you want what you want is, and then you want, and see, I don't know, you know how I am. I do. I was like, ooh, that could have gone several different ways. No, that's why Angela was down there. Now, mind you, this young sister will fight somebody. These Philly people. And by the way, hey, Jaylen Brown, chef's kiss. The last place that y'all should have put a black man who's intelligent like that, who got a beard like that, is Philadelphia.
Oh my God.
I cannot wait.
Because they want us off our square. They want us to slide off our crackers. They want us to be upset. They want us to be bothered. They want us the cortisone levels to rise. They want us to be infuriated. And that's why they come like a horde of roaches, like a zombie group.
Yes.
They don't, on their own, they're not.
Yes.
And they know it. And they're telling us how small they are.
No question.
They only come in a swarm. They're like locusts.
That's right.
They only come in a swarm, and we can stand alone in the midst of that. That young lady is a representative of. There was one image that had all of the ancestors around her too, but even in the midst of this swarm of wasps or whatever they are, roaches, rats, we can still stand with dignity on our own. But what if we showed up in numbers?
What if we showed up in numbers? Well, I mean, but like I say, she's already got all the ancestors. She's sitting there with them. But I was gonna say, Angela, you know, that is, you're an academic. She's an academic. I try to keep all of my students. I don't call them my replacements anymore. These are my upgrades. So, you know, Shanice Thompson, all them Yofis is in yo. These are my upgrades. So I don't want her in the thing because I see how these Philly join. They be ready to fight somebody. But how ironic was it? We laughed about it once we got past it. She the one telling me, okay, don't say that. Wait, no, you from Philly. You're the one who you no, okay. But I wasn't, I was never in any danger. I was never in any danger because one of the reasons he's standing over here so salty is because you know and I know that you out here with a bunch of black men. And while it sounds to you like I'm clowning them, which I am kind of, but also I'm really clowning you. Y'all think that I'm gonna throw my pencil away. The thing that's threatening you ain't the speech, ain't what I'm saying. The thing that's threatening you is this. This is scaring the shit out of you. So I took my pencil away from y'all and I came back without it. You think I'm throwing my pencil away? You go to hell.
Yeah.
This is what's gonna kill you. Anyway.
Was the pen is mightier than the what? Yes. And when I say we show up in a swarm of numbers, I'm talking about November.
Absolutely.
Show up.
Absolutely.
Beyond reason. Let's show up.
Absolutely. Love you.
I love you too. All right. See you next week. Oh, I'll see you next week.
I'll see. Hey, Monday night, y'all. Remember chapters 37, 38, 39, and 40 in the second emancipation. So see y'all Monday night in Nubia. Y'all come on in. We're gonna finish this conversation strong. Love you. See you later.
But somebody gotta do it. Got my foot up on the gas, but somebody gotta do it.